The 8th meeting of the Board of Trustees to order. Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we open our meeting tonight, I do want to recognize one person in the audience, and that is Pavlina Kilgallen, who is a student at SUNY Oneonta, and she is serving as an intern, working with the village this fall. I don't know if it continues into the spring semester, to support our efforts in being a clean energy community and what's the other program? Climate Smart community. So she has facilitated and taken minutes at one of our community and environment meetings, and she's working with MVED, the Mohawk Valley Economic Development District, to ensure that we get the credits that we sort of deserve so that we'll be eligible for $15,000 to support programs in our community. So thank you so much, and we appreciate your service. At this time, we would like to see if there's any public comment. Yes.
Hi, I'm Patty Fish. I live on Lake Street. I'm here as an observer for the League of Women Voters, and I just have a question about the Watershed Supervisory Committee minutes that were in the agenda. Do you want me to wait until we get to that?
You know, are you observing through our entire long meeting, no matter how long it is?
What do you think, buddy? That's my wrap anyway. Yes, I'll be here until.
Okay, they are going to be reviewed at the end, and rather than pull things around at the agenda, or if you tire of us, you can go and always ask later, and no problem, no problem. Any other public comments? No? If not, I will close that. I do want to point out that we have received several letters, and the correspondence includes a letter from Charles Hill regarding banners on utility poles, a letter from Carolyn Rogers-Roos regarding banners on Main Street, a letter from Lana Weir regarding veterans banners. We also received today they were hand-delivered 65 letters delivered by Helmut Mikulich in support of the veteran banners. And those are not in your packets, but they were emailed to all board members, so I hope you had a moment to read those 65, but they are part of the public record. We've had also an email that is in your additional agenda items from Christian Connolly regarding the veteran banners. And there is a report in your additional agenda items from Dr. Sternberg pertaining to the Vecina Group project. And if you want, I'll let you talk about that when we talk about 217 Main Street. All right, so moving on, we have no public hearings tonight, so we'll begin by a review and approval of the minutes of the September 23rd, 2024 regular meeting. I know Cindy and I both submitted some corrections. I don't know if anything jumped out at any of the rest of you. If not, then I move that we approve the minutes of the September 23rd meeting. Is there a second? By Joe. All in favor?
Aye.
We have several permit applications in front of us. The first is an application to use village property boardroom from Lynn Maybus, Friends of Village Library, for the Winter Carnival book sale on January 29th, 2025, 5 p.m. through February 2nd, 2025, 6 p.m., and to use the Fair Street sidewalk area on June 12th, 2025, she's planning in advance, through Sunday, June 29th, for the summer book sale. So it's essentially the two Friends of Library book sales. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Question,
Oops, I'm sorry.
do any of those dates overlap with our meetings? The second set of dates, I'm having trouble reading it. What did you say the second set of dates was?
The 12th through
Oh, okay.
the Sunday, the
I
29th.
misread that.
That's the.
That's
sidewalk.
outside, that doesn't,
Oh,
it
okay.
isn't,
I'm
it's
sorry.
the winter one is inside. So,
It's after our meeting.
George made the motion, seconded by Hannah, all in favor?
Aye.
Application to use village property, village streets from the Cooperstown Vets Club for the Veterans Day Parade on November 11th, 2024, to include Main Street from Fair Street to Pine Boulevard.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Richard, second by Joe, all in favor? Application to use village property, village streets from Elaine Brzee, 4Cs, for the Christmas Parade on November 29th, 2024, from 5 p.m. till 5:30 p.m. Moved by Audrey, second by George, all in favor? Application to use village property, village streets for the Halloween parade on October 31st, 2024. And they're gonna have beautiful weather for that.
I had a question about that application. Specifically, it says Main Street to Chestnut Street. Well, that's an intersection, so obviously that's not what they meant. What do they mean for the
It is.
route of the?
It usually goes to the Chamber of Commerce is where it ends.
I can't hear you.
They
It
go
ends
to
at
the
the
Chamber of Commerce.
So
Okay.
from Fair Street to Chestnut Street, I think is what it should say.
Yes,
Is that what you're saying?
that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So
As amended.
Yes.
moved by Cindy, second by Joe, all in favor? And then there was one more, which came in today. It's on your additional agenda item. Application to use village property, village streets, 2 parking spaces from Gokul Samudrala. I'm not sure I have the exact pronunciation. For sparklers and ground fireworks on November 2nd, 2024. And specifically, for those who were at the breakfast with the board this morning at 8 o'clock, she came and clarified exactly what she would be wanting, which is there's a celebration of Denali, which is going to be held on that date at Templeton Hall, and they will be outside. They don't envision going, into the street, but they did ask that 2 parking spaces right in front of Templeton Hall be sort of marked off, and they will be doing sparklers and ground fireworks for Denali. So, motion?
And this requires a waiver of the insurance.
And yes, do you
requirement.
want to make all that motion?
Yeah, I'll
please?
make a motion to approve the application and waive the insurance requirement.
Motion made, second by Audrey, all in favor?
Aye.
And then we have Lakefront Parks Concert Series review and approve, I guess, future plans.
Randy's not coming until later, that's why that's on the additional agenda, so we can.
Okay, so we will handle that one. It's the last page in your additional agenda packet, so we will do that later when Randy appears. Okay, I think we've gotten through all of the others. Moving on, we have the zoning officials report, and everybody was emailed the minutes of the planning board, HPARB, and ZBA minutes, so hopefully you had a chance to review all those digitally. And his report is in our packet. We are now going to address under zoning local law, proposed local law 11 of 2024, the sign law amendment, which was tabled from last month. And that is the one that pertains to the use of utility poles on the streets of Chestnut Street, Lake Street, Pine Boulevard, and Glen Avenue east of Grove Street, with the idea of using the utility poles for banners. The board did not discuss that.
Motion to take it off the table?
To take
Take
it
it off
off.
the table, that means bring it up for discussion.
Oh, we did table it?
We did formally table this, so we have to.
Oh, okay,
formally table it.
motion, second by Joe, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. All right, so we are considering that proposed local law 11 of 2024, the sign law amendment, which currently our sign law does not allow banners on utility poles. So it would be addressing those utility poles on the mentioned streets, Chestnut Street, Lake Street, Pine Boulevard, and Glen Avenue east of Grove Street. And we gave the public last month an opportunity to speak, and we had quite a few speakers. And as you can see, we've also had quite a few letters that were submitted. So the way that we're going to do this is now each board member will have the opportunity to speak and state their opinions on this proposed change to the sign law. And I am going to begin with that, and I will be the first speaker. In this discussion of veteran banners on NYSEG utility poles in the village, emotions have run very high. We have heard, one, they will distract drivers and cause accidents, even though there is no documentation that this is the case in any of the communities with banners in place. Oneonta, which has a great deal of signage on their main street, along with banners on the lamp poles, has seen no increase in distracted driving. Drivers looking at their phones is a more prevalent concern. Another argument, if we open it to these banners, it is open to all. The NYSEG official who handles this program for utility poles throughout central New York indicated that nearly all applications have pertained to veteran banners. NYSEG has turned down a few applications. They were from private businesses or had signage political in nature. Other safety concerns or other issues we've heard are safety concerns, that they won't be visible with all the trees we have in our village. Remember, a nonprofit organization must first apply to NYSEG listing the pole numbers that they request for banner display. All requests are then evaluated in the field by a NYSEG engineer who considers sight lines and safety. We have heard the village will lose control. In addition to the NYSEG application, the village could institute a permit process which could address any other concerns, duration of display, removal of damaged banners, etc. And obviously, streets where we are allowing banners and we're not. We have also heard the village has also already constructed veteran monuments in our community. And no, that is not accurate, and nothing for which we can take credit. As mayor of Cooperstown, it is my honor to be asked to speak every year at our community's Memorial Day ceremony. I often note the memorials in our village to honor and remember those who traveled far beyond our small village to defend the principles and freedoms of our nation. The Soldiers and Sailors Monument, where the Memorial Day ceremony takes place, was erected in the early 1900s. Not by the village, but by Otsego County in memory of all those in Otsego County who served in the Civil War. The statue of a World War I infantryman at the north end of Pine Boulevard was installed and dedicated in 1931, 13 years after the 1918 armistice. Again, not in a memorial in any way paid for and installed by the village. For years after 1918, there had been talk of creating some sort of monument, but nothing was done. Finally, the ladies, and I love that, the ladies of the American Legion Auxiliary number 579 pledged themselves to properly commemorate the deeds and the names of those who made the supreme sacrifice. These were women who lost fathers, husbands, or sons. They enlisted a local resident, former New York State Senator Walter Stokes, to spearhead the design and fundraising campaign. The campaign was overwhelmingly supported by local residents, particularly those who'd lost a family member in that great war. In just over a year, the Doughboy Monument was dedicated on Armistice Day, November 11, 1931. And on the reverse is a plaque which lists the names of 27 men from Cooperstown who died in that war. Many of those family names, Coleman, Cooper, Eggleston, Johnson, are still present in our community today, more than 100 years later, as well as one name, Clark F. Simmons, for whom our American Legion post is named. In February 1966, the American Legion and VFW Post announced plans for a new Veterans Memorial and began raising funds for it. Again, not funded by the village. The memorial was placed on Pine Boulevard at the intersection of Main Street and Pine Boulevard and dedicated that same year on Memorial Day, May 30th, 1966. It was intended to honor Korean and World War II veterans and is inscribed in lasting memory of the Cooperstown area men and women who served in their country's war. They gave their today for our tomorrow. The dedication of that memorial occurred before our village lost Private First Class Robert Atwell, who died on March 21st, 1968 during the Tet Offensive in Vietnam. Bobby, a CCS graduate, class of 66, was 20 years old when he died. When he died, I was 13, and I remember his face. On Memorial Day, May 30th, 2022, a plaque provided with funding from the VFW, American Legion, local Rotary, and Lions clubs, as well as Bobby's only remaining family member, his sister Neil, was dedicated in Lakefront Park. Bobby's name is inscribed on the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, the wall in Washington, D.C. It is the most visited memorial in Washington. Last year, a project to not only remember the name, but also the face associated with those 58,000 names was finally completed. It is called the Wall of Faces. It is both a digital site you can access online at home or at the memorial. There are 4 pictures of Bobby on that site. An image of a face has power and is meaningful. Just after Bobby's death, Sergeant John Winslow died in Vietnam in July 1969. John was also a CCS graduate, class of 1964. there is no marker bearing John's name in our village. We can say that the stone monument on Pine Boulevard honors all those who died in subsequent wars, but what about terrorist attacks? I was also in school with Kevin Poolman. He graduated from CCS in 1974 and SUNY Oneonta in 1978. He then enlisted in the US Marines. He was killed in the bombing in Beirut, Lebanon in October 1983, a terrorist attack by Hezbollah which killed 241 US military personnel in a region of our world still in conflict today. There is no monument to Kevin in the community where he went to school. Last year, his class held their 50th reunion. Classmates put flowers on his grave in St. Mary's Cemetery in Hardwick Seminary, and then went on and put flowers by the monument in Oneonta's Neowa Park, where all 25 New Yorkers killed in that terrorist attack have their names inscribed. A face is so important. In 2020, during the pandemic, when George Floyd was killed, one additional person in our nation's incredibly troubled history of race relations, not only did we say his name, but we also had iconic images of his face painted on buildings, not just in Minneapolis, but in other cities. In PowerPoint presentations for our village's police reform plan, his face, depicted on those murals, was front and center. I don't know if the murals in those cities violated sign laws. I do know that our communities and cities are a reflection of all those who live there. A face is important. I realize that I am most likely the lone vote for this change to our sign law. I'm also the only one sitting here who knew these individuals and will remember their faces. Would I have donated money for banners for Bobby, Michael, and Kevin so they could be remembered in their hometown? Absolutely. It's the least I could do. Cindy?
I did not write my remarks, so they will not be as coherent perhaps. I did want to start by thanking everyone who's spoken on this topic. As the mayor pointed out, this is clearly a topic that has great passions on both sides, and so as we think about participatory government, this is the way things are supposed to work. I also wanted to say thank you to all of you in the audience tonight who are veterans. Regardless of how this vote turns out, I think we need to understand that this board supports our veterans in the community, and I'll get to that at the end. Since Joan brought this up, I have paid more attention to banners in many communities throughout New York State than I had in the past. Most of them have been hometown hero banners, some of them have not. Rochester, New York, it turns out, for instance, has banners representing famous people who are buried in Mount Hope Cemetery. As I've done this, I've thought a lot about Cooperstown and what makes Cooperstown alike and different from other communities. I think one thing that strikes me is that Cooperstown is a destination. And last month, we heard about Cooperstown as a tourist destination, but it's also a destination for the about 500,000 people who go to Bassett. And so in terms of signs, I think that intersects in two ways. One, this is likely to be a desirable location in terms of signage. My guess is that there may be more people who want signage here than in other spots because people come here. I know that the mayor has referred to NYSEG's regulations. I am not personally comfortable turning over elements of signage to a utility company. I know what their rules say now. I also know that they could change. I am also very concerned about First Amendment issues. That being, a number of the letters that we even received today ask the board to make an exception for this very worthy cause. And we can't do that. We can't make an exception. We can change the sign law, and that's what we're considering. But it needs to be understood that that means anyone who fits in that category, right? Any nonprofit with a non-commercial message can apply under the same criteria. The other thing that strikes me, while I know there are no documented cases of traffic hazards or that sort of thing related to banners, here, because we are a destination, there is more potential for problems. There are lots of people who come to Cooperstown. Some of them know where they're going. Some of them don't know where they're going. Some of them are highly stressed as they're trying to get to Bassett. We also, I hope, have a higher value of pedestrians than some other communities that have banners. And those things, while they don't make this proposal not make sense, they are, in my mind, a cause for more concern. One of the other things that I think makes our community different is that we have a sign law. A lot of little communities where these are put up don't. It turns out, I was digging through some old paperwork, we have had a sign law since at least 1978. So this is a long part of our history. That law talks about preserving a sense of place and not being like other places. It talks about preserving scenic views. And it really strikes me that our planning board, an individual member of our planning board, and the past chair of our planning board, who have all worked on the current iteration of this law, were not in favor of changing it. That they felt that the provisions that had been put in place regarding utility poles were there for a reason. The mayor mentioned trees as well. One of the questions that came up last week was how many poles are there? So today I spent a little time trying to count. Unless one is walking, it is hard to do that, because if you're driving, you can't see the poles, or at least some of the poles. Not all of them, certainly by Price Chopper you can see them. But I think there are about 60. But because we are a tree city, a lot of our views are blocked. I drive through Milford almost every day, every work day, going to Oneonta. And in Milford, you'll notice, if you haven't before, that there are no trees in the tree lawn. There are only utility poles. And so that creates a very nice canvas that we don't have. You've probably gotten the impression at this point that my intention is to vote against the changes to the law. In saying that, I do think that the village of Cooperstown should find ways to memorialize and individually memorialize our veterans. I know that Hartwick is considering a paver program. That may be one way to do it. Certainly there was reference to the wall in Washington, D.C. that memorializes Vietnam War veterans. But I would like to have the opportunity to continue a discussion about how else this might be done.
Thank you. Richard?
I can't follow the eloquence of the mayor or the deputy mayor, nor did I prepare statements. I have concerns basically about the sign law, and that if a sign law changes and a program such as this goes into place, what the rules of it are. I've asked this once before, and that's not at all clear to me. Who's going to make the decision? How is it going to be made? Who's going to determine who's first? Who's going to determine who's from Cooperstown? I figured there are about 3,000 veterans from Cooperstown. A lot of them are from Civil War. And then are we going to put up banners for all of these people? So in a sense, I don't see that this honors, if the change goes through and the program comes up, I did not see that the program particularly honors veterans. I think it honors or points out or self-aggrandizement for some people. If it does pass, I'm still going to want to see a program, a very careful program of who gets assigned and who doesn't. I'm done.
Thank you, Richard. John?
Just gotta turn this.
Let's see if I can
It's blinking. Do I have to do more?
Is it blinking green?
Now it's great.
Still not great. I'll be fine.
Just has to warm up, I reckon.
Shouldn't have to.
No, it's blinking.
There's a lot before,
Oh.
Joe.
It's coming very good.
Oh,
It's giving a countdown.
Thank you to all who participated in the discussion of the banner proposal and sign law amendment to authorize the installation of commemorative banners on village streets. This will be the Board of Trustees' fourth meeting on this topic. In the first three meetings, we heard from proponents and opponents of the proposal and sign law amendment. Today, we received a packet of more than 60 support letters, the majority of which were from non-residents of Cooperstown. Tonight, we are responsible for deciding whether to amend the village sign law. I have carefully considered the public comments on this issue and appreciate the interest and depth of feeling that it has generated. On the screen are photographs of Cooperstown's military service monuments. There are 5 of them. One at the county seat on Main Street commemorating the Civil War, a grouping of 3 at the north end of Pine Boulevard in memory of World War I service. At the south end of Pine Boulevard, a monument commemorating service and sacrifice in all our country's wars, and the Vietnam Robert Atwell Memorial in Lakefront Park. The memorial to Robert Atwell expresses the nobility of service and the tragedy of war through the life and death of one son of Cooperstown. The Atwell Memorial was erected during my tenure as trustee. I voted in favor of it. All these memorials are in public spaces that foster quiet contemplation and remembrance. In visiting them recently, I tried to put myself in the time and place of those who erected the Civil War and World War I memorials. Did they then believe that war at last was behind them? Some may have noticed that the World War I memorial remembers those who served in the World War. Its bronze castings list more than 200 servicemen and women. Perhaps it was unimaginable then that the war to end all wars would have a sequel, though it did, within a generation, and caused historians to rebrand the World War as merely the first. To me, the most striking and mournful monument is at the south end of Pine Boulevard, directly across Main Street from the Civil War monument. It concedes that there may never be a time when we erect the last memorial for the final war. That monument instead stands for all Cooperstown area men and women who served in their country's wars. The monument is a timeless reminder of the ongoing sacrifice of their today for our tomorrow. With grace, dignity, and endurance, it bears witness to the awful truth of war's human toll. I urge all to visit Cooperstown's military monuments and reflect on the gifts of service and sacrifice that they represent. Against the backdrop of these memorials, by which Cooperstown honors military service, and for the following reasons, I oppose amending the village sign law as proposed in the pending motion. First, each of us on this board has the title of trustee. We are fiduciaries, sworn to care for the public interest in the rule of law, including the safety, health, comfort, and general welfare of Cooperstown's inhabitants, the protection of their property and businesses, and the preservation of peace and good order in our public spaces. Second, we trustees and our predecessors are stewards of the village's home rule authority that is protected by state law.
Trustees have used that right of self-determination and self-governance on behalf of the village to design, erect, and enact and implement legislation to fulfill the village's governmental responsibilities. Our village laws are compiled in a book that's right there in the clerk's office, available for review, and they're also published online at our village website. I'm opposed to ceding any of the authority that we have as the village of Cooperstown to NYSEG for sign law purposes. Third, trustees do not enact legislation in isolation. Our village has 13 boards and committees on which approximately 60 village residents serve, as the trustees do without compensation. Decisions on what laws to enact and how they are written and administered are informed by the work of the village's boards and committees and the public. This is true of our sign law, which ensures the right of free speech, provides for commercial advertising, and protects vehicular and pedestrian safety by limiting visual clutter and discouraging distracted driving. Our law does all of this while caring for Cooperstown's rich history, scenic streets, businesses, museums, religious institutions, and landscapes, all of which benefit residents and visitors from around the nation and across the world. The Planning Board, in independent deliberations, reached a reasoned decision to recommend that the trustees not approve the proposed sign law amendment. The Planning Board's recommendation appropriately has weighed heavily in my review of this matter. Fourth, the village recognizes the activities of nonprofit charitable organizations whose activities center in and whose headquarters are in the village, as well as the towns of Otsego, Middlefield, Springfield, and Putnam. In support of those activities, the village, at considerable expense, designed, constructed, and services 2 sets of display poles on Main Street. The poles can accommodate banners that traverse Main Street at a height sufficient to avoid any hazard to vehicles and pedestrians, and at the same time, inform residents and visitors of the good works ongoing in our communities. The village has adopted criteria and an application process for displaying banners. A banner commemorating military service, in my view, could be designed to meet the display criteria for periodic use of the banner poles. Fifth, instead of taking their turn to use the village banner poles, proponents of the sign law amendment seek installation of banners throughout residential neighborhoods without limit. The proposed amendment arbitrarily and invidiously designates certain village streets for the banner displays. That should be unacceptable by itself, but in my view, it gets worse. When asked at a previous Board of Trustees meeting about how banner sighting would occur, a banner proponent answered, "First come, first served. And if we run out of space on the streets identified in the law, we will get more streets." Sixth, if an amendment is made to the sign law to accommodate this banner project, the amendment will open previously restricted public space and infrastructure to all who satisfy the criteria for displays on our 2 Main Street banner poles. In other words, it would be unlawful for the proposed amendment to be for the exclusive benefit of those promoting military service banners. For example, qualifying nonprofit groups seeking the end of gun violence, advocating policies to address climate change, or promoting racial reconciliation will be entitled to a meaningful opportunity for banner display permits. However, the military service banner proponents have expressed an expectation of an indefinite, renewable entitlement to all display spaces that the amendment would authorize. 7, the proposed amendment would place an administrative burden on the village associated with official review and decision-making on successive and at times competing banner display applications. That process could well lead to costly conflict and demands for additional legislation. For these reasons, I will vote against the amendment to the village sign law and urge my fellow trustees to vote against it as well.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Anna?
Hi. Hello. I think, again, I would like to follow Cindy's lead and say that I thank all the veterans. I have many veterans in my family as well. But Cooperstown is a very unique village, and I don't believe that we need to do what every other village is doing with banners. I think there are other opportunities to make something that's a little more unique to our community. And for that and many other reasons that both Cindy and Joe brought up, I'm not in favor of changing the sign law.
Thank you, George?
Good evening, everybody. One of the key factors for me when considering this issue here in the village is the temporary nature of the banners themselves. I'm a fan of monuments. Monuments speak very, very loudly, clearly. They're timeless. And I think that's really important. I grew up in the Bronx. I was about 10 blocks from Yankee Stadium. If you go to Yankee Stadium, there's middle of center field, you have monuments to the ball players. Okay, I worked for 34 years as a Suffolk County police officer. If you go to headquarters on Yaphank Avenue, okay, as you approach the entrance to headquarters, there's a monument to all the police officers killed in the line of duty. Again, even if you've been in and out of that building 100 times, it stops you in your tracks. It gives you pause. Monuments are substantial. They speak loudly. Banners are personal. Again, we have a problem here. It's prime real estate. Okay, the number of people who might seek to hang a banner here in the village is probably substantial. Unlike some of the other locales where the banners are hung, we have a tremendous amount of pedestrian traffic. Many younger kids, and again, certainly during the busier times of the year here, the risk of somebody being waffled by an automobile is pretty substantial. I can't endorse the proposal for the change in the law, and I hope people recognize just how terrific the traditional way of honoring our veterans serves so many communities. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Audrey?
Well, thank you. I'm sorry that I was not present for a lot of the discussion around this. I will say that I have a special place in my heart for the military. I lived overseas with the military. My father served in World War II, and my mother's family was deeply affected by the war. I appreciate all the comments that both Mayor Tillaba and Deputy Mayor Falk have said. I see both sides. This is a very difficult decision. I am the newest trustee here, and so not as familiar with everything as some of the other trustees with regard to the sign laws. I was struck today when I was in Rensselaer to see the Hometown Hero banners, and they look really awful. They must have been left outside. I don't know why they look the way they do, but it is not very fitting of a memorial to our veterans. But I think overwhelmingly, as much as I appreciate and understand where Mayor Tillaba is coming from, that because of many of the issues that were brought up around the sign laws, that I too will be voting against it.
Okay. So the board has all spoken. I move, is there a motion on the table? No. If I made the motion to approve local law 11 of 2024, the sign law amendment relative to banners, would there be a second? You would second it. Thank you, so that there can be a vote. I appreciate that, Cindy. All right, so all those in favor of the sign law amendment relative to banners on certain utility poles, please raise their hand. Okay, please let the record show. Jenna, thank you. All those opposed to local law 11 of 2024? All right. You have it, Jenna? Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for your participation in this process. It is appreciated.
So are you saying this is totally over?
done, finished.
She can't, doesn't have a right to speak.
It is complete.
Kim? Fine. You should all be ashamed of yourselves.
We are going to move on to local law 12. Does that become, it actually would become 11 now. So the next one pertaining to the zoning amendments.
Ellen, can I just say something? I'm sorry, I invited the parks, presentation to be here, and I don't know if you want to kind of
Oh, okay.
throw them in the middle, and then we'll get back to zoning, because they haven't.
Okay, perfect. We will put sorry parks.
No, yeah, I'm sorry that.
Yeah, I think you had told me that, Jenna, and I missed it. That's my fault. Hello, Alex.
I don't know if Alex, do you need to use the projector or no?
No, I just brought some basic handouts for us, if that works.
So we should shut that off. Thank you, Cindy.
Unless you have
We had your wonderful PowerPoint from last, I have it still.
So last month I was here before the Sonnet banner meeting, and now I'm here after. I'm not sure which is better, but I'll take a deep breath. I will switch gears to parks. And I'm back here today with some other Friends of the Parks members and with our engineer, Alex Herman, to sort of keep the ball rolling and keep the conversation going about the proposed project at Ferry Spring Park. And just wanted to back up just a tiny bit about, I don't think I addressed this really at our last meeting, but just kind of where did this idea come from? Just a reminder of what sort of inspired us to pursue this, and I think that's important. And the very first thing that inspired us was actually safety. The way the road is currently approaches into the park and around the pavilion is actually kind of scary at times when you're a pedestrian and a car is coming around the wide corner. So that was for me an inspiration to initially think about rerouting the road. But once we began to think about rerouting the road, then the potential of making the park a more enjoyable space for a greater variety of people and a greater variety of uses kind of started to come into clarity. And that's where we came up with the idea for the Ferry Spring Park view, the only public access to look at the sunset on the lake, and also to expand the use of the pavilion, which in its current form is a little bit cold and dark and not overly utilized. So that was basically the inspiration for where this plan came from. So today, our goal is to have you hear from our engineer, his rationale for perhaps the wall which was a concern, the retaining wall that would be required or potentially be required for moving the road, and discuss any of your concerns or questions, and you can talk to the expert himself. Should I pass it over to Alex? Any questions for me?
No, thank you.
Understands, does that work? Yeah. So we've been developing a few renderings here. These are draft forms still. So there's some elements that are not gonna be perfect, right? This is not completely photorealistic, but it gives you an idea. So yes, I understand you guys have talked a little bit about process, where we're going, what we're looking at doing here. So the biggest things that really have not been touched on at all are cost. So we have prepared a preliminary cost estimate, we'll get to that. But I wanna have you all look at there's two sheets in the front, those are two different renderings from different angles. Everybody's familiar with what it looks like now, correct? So the first photo is looking down the road that's there now, and currently it goes around, swings around, and goes around the front or the lake side of the building. And we're looking to eliminate that and put the roadway behind the building and put a deck out front. So those are the two main exterior elements. Biggest question marks to date.
This is the back.
Yeah, so yes, that's the,
That's the proposed.
This is the proposed, where you said there's a picture of it, the way it is now.
they're both proposed, they're just different angles.
Okay.
Yep, so the one looking down the roadway right now, we're showing asphalt surface, so that's element one. Does not need to be asphalt, but coming down the roadway now currently is asphalt, so we said let's marry it together. and bring that all the way around. There's parking on the backside of this, which you can kind of see here. You'll also see the deck on the lake side of this, you can see the front of it. So the biggest takeaways from this angle are what you would see as you're driving into the park. You can see the retaining wall that was shown. I know the retaining wall, there's a bunch of questions on that. So I think somebody had a question about the retaining wall and was it maintenance? I think was the issue, is that correct?
That has been raised, yes, right?
Okay.
I think it was kind of twofold on earlier meetings, Alex. It was aesthetics, because this is a WPA building.
Sure.
And so something kind of modernish wouldn't be applicable or appropriate.
Sure.
And I also do think there might be maintenance issues long-term, because obviously this type of wall would be more permanent than, for instance, the railroad ties, which were on the lake side of the current road,
Yes.
which it was over 80,000 to kind of remove them, rebuild around the stairs, and basically change the slope a little bit so that we didn't need a retaining wall with further maintenance costs.
Sure, yeah, so let's get right into that. So on this retaining wall that we're looking at, this is a much more permanent construction. This is not railroad ties, this is not pressure treated timber. This is a prefabricated unit, it's called a segmented retaining wall. It's precast concrete, it's got a facade on the front of it. We do a ton of these. They look nice, there is hundreds of options of what this thing could look like. The takeaway from this is that by having the retaining wall, there's a little bit less maintenance on relative to upkeep of the grass or whatever you're gonna have instead of having the retaining wall. So that may just be if you were to grade naturally behind this thing instead of having a retaining wall, there's a little bit more upkeep by whoever's maintaining it. The downside is the cost of this is going to be slightly higher than if we didn't do that. So what I did was I did have a couple sheets in the back while we're talking about the retaining wall. There's two different kinds of facades that we're showing with this. One is a larger rock, it's more of a natural stone look. That's the one that says ledge stone, right on in big letters right in the middle of the page. Several different colors, different textures, but that's more of a natural stone look. The second page is more of a simplistic, it's a much smaller block, but it's got a little bit of texture on the front of it, but it's a very basic block. So the idea is that you can kind of see where this can go several different ways. And I think that when you see the second rendering that we put together that shows the deck, it's looking more at the wall directly, you can kind of see that texture and how it's a really small wall, it's only 4.5, 5 feet tall. This isn't gonna be a monstrosity by any means.
What are the difference in cost between the two?
Yeah, so the ledge stone is what our cost estimate is based on, this is more expensive.
Right.
The other block is not necessarily significantly less due to labor costs that are associated with it. So the much bigger block, you're putting less blocks in. You're already having somebody come and put the blocks in, so it's almost maybe 10-15% difference would be my figure.
And what's the figure?
Yes, so overall cost.
And just to say, this, we're not asking the village for money,
Right.
this is less break.
Sure. Yeah, we'll go through that. So
Quick.
That was a good
Yeah.
right there, thank you.
Thank you.
just wanna make sure.
And can I interject, I just got this figure, we just got this figure today from Alex, like, just before this meeting, so we haven't even discussed it, so just breathe.
It's just numbers, we can work with it, yeah. So what's programmed into this, have you gone through everything else that's in the project as well, originally?
Yes, we guys all got the site plan last week,
Okay, so there's a lab, there's an ADA bathroom on the inside of the facility, there's parking, there's striping, there's signage that goes with that. There's the retaining wall, paving, there's the deck, there's the ramp, there's doors, there's actually quite a bit of scope that's in this project. So right now, with this, the ledge stone wall that you're seeing in there, non-prevailing wage, correct, Martin? So we would say that you're probably looking at somewhere of $185,000 to $200,000.
And in terms of durability, these two are comparable?
Yes, we use both readily on different projects, different scope. It's really preference. The limestone is a much bigger block, so sometimes it's easier to work with, it depends.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna let you, the 185 to 200 is just for the wall?
No.
No, that's the whole
That's the
project?
yep.
And not including phase 2, the building, everything, perfect, okay.
So,
The one thing it probably doesn't include, Alex, is connecting the water to the bathroom,
that's what I
which
was
is sort of.
Okay, that was,
So that's a question mark.
Yes, we have a figure for sanitary and water.
Oh, that's.
We do have that in there. So non-prevailing wage is the key piece of this puzzle.
yep.
Yeah.
And we've asked that was confirmed, correct? So if
I
it's
gave
not,
an opinion, so everyone's aware.
sure. Yep.
Based upon if the village is not involved, we're not constrained, and a group wishes to undertake that construction, not governmental, there is no requirement that they comply with the prevailing wage law that we as a municipal entity are constrained to follow.
Yeah, it's a very important piece of it because it will easily be double the cost if it was prevailing wage. That's just the way it goes. So yes, that number includes the full scope. Now, there are nuances to figure out what kind of finishes are in the bathroom. We have that stuff plugged in. They're placeholders, but this is a budget to let them start to figure out whether it's fundraising or whoever's taking on the financial side of the project. This is where we are today. Yes, sir.
Just one additional question. Does that cost estimate include the paving of the road?
Yep, so where we are with that as well as the other side is we can take out some of these elements. So we don't necessarily have to pave the entire driveway. If anybody's having a driveway repaved recently, you know what it costs, it's a lot of money. So we looked at taking out paving. We also said if we don't do the retaining wall and we do a natural swale, a little bit of retaining wall, you're not gonna get dollar for dollar back on these things. You don't just take it out and get zero. There's some monies that need to be spent, but it'll be significantly less. So if we look at doing those few things, it is possible to lower the scope. I don't think we're gonna get below $100,000 by any means. There's a good large deck in the front, ramp as well, so I think we're still gonna be north of $100,000 even if we take the paving out and do like a stone drive or something like that.
So with the ramp and the porch deck, whatever we're gonna call it, off the front, is there then a proposed opening so that someone could get inside of the building?
Yes, so there's two pieces to this, or not two pieces, but there's several entries to the space now, and there will be as well.
So the packet I gave you last month had the site plan that you created. It actually had the rendering with the entrances, just
Sure.
so you want
We can-
to refer back to that.
Yeah, we can talk through it briefly.
Sorry, I
So
don't
you-
have that.
So you do have the front entrance that still remains.
Yep.
There is the entrance that's now right along the drive, that's why we have that rail there, because we wanna, allow that to not have vehicles drive into it. And then as you get to the ramp and you come up you can either go directly to the deck or you go into the door. Everybody has access to get up to this deck facility. There was a lot of discussion on whether we wanted to allow for another entrance to get to the deck without actually having to go inside the facility. That's a logistics thing. I think that you really want to figure out if that's what you want allowed to happen, if somebody still can have access to the deck or not. Whether the facility's open, that's a different story. But yes, there are several entrances and egress. Yeah.
I have a couple of questions before I forget them. One on the accessible bathroom, can that be accessed from the deck, or do you have to go into the building to get to that? Because there are a lot of people who will just be out there to visit and not want to have to navigate.
Sure. So currently, the ramp, you have to go up to the ramp to get into the facility and then into the restroom. We do not have a separate entrance from outside.
Okay.
Correct.
The second question, you mentioned the maintenance code. The thing that's intrigued me about this retaining wall, does it have anything at all to do with the integrity of the road itself, not being undermined or not collapsing?
So between the retaining wall and the swale option,
Right, well, point being that if you're excavating to make this cut for this driveway, are you somehow affecting the road?
uphill.
Yeah.
So these these walls do not require necessarily for us to go down 4 or 5 feet into the ground like you would with a conventional footing for a house or something like that. Typically, it's 1 block down into the ground. So
Okay,
you're
so
not
it's-
over excavating a lot of dirt there.
Still not my point. I'm more worried about your feeling that having made this road cut, you need to put in a retaining wall to protect the main road.
Yeah, so we look at the grading as, and this is probably a better shot for you. As we're looking here, either way, we're gonna have to take some of these trees out. That was part of the site plan, so we're taking out some of the trees and then we would bench this back accordingly to make sure it's a proper stable slope. And even with it, if we take out the retaining wall, that's the downside to having, it's still stable, but it's a steeper slope. So whoever's maintaining the site is going to be weed whacking on a hill or something of that nature.
But the highway itself is.
I'm not worried about the highway.
There's no integrity.
It's quite a distance.
Well, that would militate, in my view, in favor of a grading option.
Potentially, yes. I'm not worried about the road moving.
Okay, that was my, because we had that on the.
Sorry, I misunderstood you, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
This is in contradistinction to what Joe just said. I've had personal construction of this nature in this typical situation, and you want a retaining wall. Absolutely. You don't want to try and save money on that.
So we are recommending the retaining wall for a few reasons. One of them is just for maintenance and such. I think that it does want to be there due to how steep that slope is. It's going to be stable, but we do think it's the best option. Now, cost is always an implication, and that's something we need to continue to work with the district.
Cindy?
So the restroom, which I think is a great idea, but getting the sewage to the septic tank seems like a lot.
Sure. So,
I mean, is it possible?
yeah, so,
It's quite a
yes.
distance away.
Yes, so we have not done, we're not talking about us having 100% design documentation, but there are options. We can look at doing a grinder pump or something that's a low pressure pump system.
Okay.
I did add that in. There's quite a bit of cost in the bathroom.
Yeah, I would imagine.
I want to say we had at least $15,000 in there because there's the ADA restroom itself is a lot. There's the grab bars, there's the threshold
Right.
requiring doors. And then, yes, we have an allowance in there for plumbing aside from that, and then a 5% contingency. So we did add, I'm hoping we have enough in there, of course, it could vary, but yes. there's an
So
option.
does it make sense to do it there or simply to make the existing restroom facility better?
It's possible. We never really discussed it. I think generally the focus was on this facility being
Right. No, I
a
get
bathroom
that.
facility. I don't know, that's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that right now the current facility is pretty far away. The people who have mobility issues in my life would have a hard time getting there. And I think we think of a wheelchair, but also people with a walker or with a cane, like it's a lot of unstable ground to get there. So my feeling is,
I'm just thinking about the sewage, which also has to make that journey if this is where the bathroom is.
Richard?
Again, as somebody who does require ADA compliant, who has difficulty ambulating, and quite frankly, Ferry Spring has been inaccessible to me for the most part. I've been asked to get involved in this issue. I don't see how you do this without having a handicap accessible bathroom within the facility. Otherwise, quite frankly, I'd almost take that as an insult.
Just to kind of bring everything full circle real quick, as we always do, we've done public bidding projects for you folks several times here. We discussed doing some bid alternates and changing things, the way we were gonna put this out to the contractors when the time comes. So there are gonna be several opportunities to see what we can get for the scope that's in there, and then maybe ask for a secondary or third price based on some different scopes. So that is part of what we're going to be doing. I wanna try to make it work for everybody.
Are there any other questions or else?
I just have a strategic one, back to your premise, which I hadn't picked up on before, the view shed of the lake and the only place to watch the sunset. And what immediately comes to mind for me is Council Rock Park, and making that accessible with pathways and a very light touch, but opening up the tree canopy, making it something accessible to get right down to the waterfront, using the stagecoach lane, and that is a spot that many more people, I think, could get to. Visitors to the village who are making that part of their itinerary as opposed to a destination visit to Berry Spring. So I don't know if any consideration has been given to that.
I guess my reaction would be, I think all of our parks should find ways to be more accessible. And in fact, even at 3 Mile, which we say is accessible, that bathroom is really hard to get to. And in Badger Park, there's a porta potty, but there's not, and we put in an accessible pavilion, but there's not an accessible bathroom there. And so I think we all need to work together to do more projects that are focused on greater variety of people and abilities using our parks, and this is one idea. And it doesn't mean we can't consider 2 or 3 or 4, but, one at a time, I think is what we're at.
But the revelation to me of this is the price tag that you mentioned. I thought that was just a retaining wall.
No, that's why,
That's a good price.
It's a very good
Yeah,
price.
so
It'd
again,
be double if it was us.
you're used,
You
you're
just
used
go,
to that.
you don't recognize it from this perspective.
But the things that take away from the paving is estimated at $50,000. It's a huge number, they're big. But we did get, the numbers that we have, based on the cost estimate, are real numbers. Local contractors that we work with, they're not just throwing a dart at the wall, they're accurate.
Do they have, as an alternative to asphalt, do they have the grids that you find on walking paths in swampy areas that they're basically plastic, some are metal, and they're overtopped with gravel, and they maintain their stability, the gravel does their road. What are your paving options other than loose gravel to asphalt?
There's a lot of options. The only 2 options we've really weighed to date are paving and stone. Yep, we will certainly, we're kind of still in I call it the design development, right? We're really kind of scratching the surface of certain things, so we will absolutely be looking at several options of materials to use.
Then let me bring up my same comment again. Paving's a lot easier if you have an ambulatory problem, if you require some sort of assistive device than stone. Stone gives way when I put my cane down on it.
Yeah, and that's why we programmed the pavement in now with the estimate, so that we know where our higher end of this project is. Understood.
Just on that note, Bruce, our current president, by the way, Bruce Miller, or president of the park, and he just reminded me that Mitch felt strongly felt pretty comfortable about paving because they do use that park for storage through off-season and plowing. It's a lot easier with that. So that, we always like to bring Mitch into our discussions. What he has to say.
Okay.
So you're pretty much, I just want to confirm what the board wants. Obviously, this is a fabulous improvement, and we really appreciate the Friends of the Parks for all their work and their future fundraising for this project. It is something that is going in a public park. So to a degree, I think there probably will need to be a little more oversight as we go along.
Well, you are gonna have to approve the work, you own the facility.
Yeah, so
So
just so you
you're
know.
approving the plus that Alex was talking about is municipalities are constrained to following prevailing wage, which if anyone's familiar with that it mandates how much you have to pay for all forms of labor, and it is incredible. In some places, a couple $100 an hour for certain types of equipment operators or more.
Even if they're sitting there.
Yep, and that's what if we went to bid and we're doing this and paying for it with taxpayer funds, we'd have that dilemma, and the bids would be, Alex has said, probably well over twice again. So the real advantage here is they would be, if this were to come to fruition, Friends would be kind of the spearhead of trying to raise the funds but obviously as things change, let's say they don't raise the funds and something has to change, it's your property, this board would have to work in partnership, not financial, but in terms of approving or disapproving of various works.
All right. Any more questions from the board? Are we all good? Thank you so incredibly much. It was
So,
wonderful.
Alan, just to be clear, just next steps for us going forward, is there anything else that you would like us, as we go off into kind of more details and obviously starting our sort of fundraising journey for this, what do we need from you, from the board officially? Do we need approval?
Yeah, I think you're gonna need, I think it would need to be reduced to paper, a form of mutual agreement, acknowledging the Friends of the Park's obligations to spearhead the fundraising and to pay for whatever project. It would also outline the village's intent to be cooperative and, but remain in the position of saying yay or nay to any type of work that may be going on in their park.
Does that require some vote on your part to?
The agreement probably would. I think that's something we'll put together on a draft.
Yeah, I think what you're getting at is that you would like a sense of the board that this conceptually is something we would support, we have to approve all the details, but you don't want to go off on a mission that you can't represent to others that the village supports this, right? That's what you need, and I don't.
Absolutely. I will make a motion to support the Ferry Spring, what is it, Ferry Lane and
Ferry Spring Park Lane and Ferry Spring Park View.
View, all right. Approach that is being proposed by the Friends of the Parks. And second by Cindy, all in favor?
Just a discussion, we do need to do what Mark's talking about. We're gonna have to have this pretty well lined out. This, to me, isn't enough. It would be subject to an agreement in principle between the parties.
That will be subject to an agreement.
Well, yeah, so this is my other question, is what other review processes are there? So you need site plan review from the town of Middlefield.
Correct.
Which the village will actually have to sign on that as the property owner. And then I think a question for this board, it's not subject to HPARB review because it's outside of the village, but we may want you to take it to HPARB to get their feedback.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's what I was asking.
Not if it's not subject to the review, I don't want their feedback.
Okay.
Well, we kind of appoint them because of their expertise, so.
Yeah.
It'll be a decision of the board.
Yeah.
All set.
Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alex.
Wait a minute, we
Thank
still
you so
have a
much.
motion on the floor.
Oh, I thought we did.
No.
Oh, no, okay. And we put that one thing subject to an ultimate agreement
Yeah,
in
they
there,
changed that.
Jenna. So all those in favor?
Acceptable.
Aye.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you so much. Just make sure you have my pen. Betcha. Here to represent the, somebody left something on the back of the chair, I believe.
So
No?
Jenna, just give me a heads up if Randy comes in, so we'll just keep moving on. Now we are at local law, which is now 11 of 2024, and this pertains to the zoning amendments. We also held this public hearing last month, and we were waiting for the opinions of the Otsego County Planning Department, which did come and which is in your packet. So at this point, we need to proceed with is a seeker, and that is also in your packet. So this is a just a legislative sort of action. So we have, you see, completed part one, and we now go to part two.
May I ask a
Proceed.
procedural question? We will discuss the law itself as a decision-making after we do the seeker review. I mean, I have some questions about the law that I would like to get clarified so that I can make an informed decision.
If you have questions about the law, certainly, we have publicly noticed and held a public hearing on this law, so we can't change anything.
Right,
Okay,
this is ready to go to my vote on whether to vote in favor or
Okay,
against. And the clarifying question I have, and I know Cindy's worked very hard to help me understand this, but my biggest concern is that based on my work on the special committee to get the ADU change in our law, we were trying to promote long-term residential ownership, people aging in place and able to make some kind of income off of their real property by renting it and still living in an auxiliary dwelling unit. The way this legislation is working, because of the two-family authority that permits absentee landlords, we are kind of bringing this ADU legislation into conformity so that we would, with that two-family authority, so that we end up having absentee landlords, that there will be no property owner needing to be on that property, and that both properties can be rented. And I'm concerned about that because of all of the buying up of real property that is going on, and people using it as investments, and it makes it very tenuous for people to actually have their first home, own their home, and be in it, and live the life that their prior generation did. So if this legislation, and I know that Chip Northrup made some remarks about this too, and I don't know if I'm angling in on the same problem, but I am concerned about enacting a law that permits much broader absentee landlord proprietorship in our village.
okay, so I know Cindy has addressed this with several people, so I'll let her lead the charge.
So what you are describing in most parts of the village has been allowed since the 1960s.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that you can own a single-family home and have a secondary unit on your property is not something that in the R3 district, which is the bulk of the village, we have prohibited, going back at least as far as 1968. So that has been on the books. It does not seem to be causing the rush of absentee owner development that is feared. Probably one of the reasons for that is that property values in Cooperstown are high enough that this would not be the place that one would choose to pursue that particular type of development. On the flip side, what this law would allow is in the scenario you spell out where a family has owned a single-family house for years, for decades, and have decided that that single-family house is too big for them, and they want to erect a smaller accessory dwelling unit in their backyard. They're not gonna live in the single family anymore, they're gonna choose to rent that and live in the accessory dwelling unit. This change allows that to happen. It provides more flexibility for property owners as well as potential property developers. And it always requires a special use permit, meaning that it would always be reviewed. And this is, I think, what was misunderstood at the public hearing. This setup would always be reviewed by the zoning board of appeals, and the zoning board of appeals could establish criteria in keeping with the zoning law to that special use permit.
Right, but to me, the special use permit is going to become routine. The kind of special use permit I want to have both properties I can have both properties be rental properties under a special use permit?
If your special use permit is granted,
Well,
then
then
there's a
what-
review
what-
process.
So, but,
There's a public hearing, there are 16 criteria, we go through them
Right, but-
regularly, and then there's a provision for further rules.
right, but if everybody, we're talking about a special use permit process for a thing that everybody's gonna wanna do. I don't know how you discriminate in a special use permit when all I'm saying is I wanna build my ADU and I wanna be able to rent both of them.
Because you have actually been able to do that under our zoning law and people just don't do it.
But that is changing, I think. That is changing dramatically in terms of real property ownership and
I don't know that it is.
real estate trusts and all these things happening.
I mean, this is intended to promote long-term rentals. That's what it's intended to do. The ownership structure of that could vary.
Exactly, and my point is that we're sweeping home ownership up into rentals, rather than preserving home ownership by means of letting another piece of the property be rented. Long-term rentals are really illusory to me when long-term rentals means 31 days. I understand there's a student issue, I understand there's a hospital, student back and forth, but we also have a need for that, but we also have a need to build stable, affordable housing, not in terms of building by building, but a legal construct that turns housing affordable for people who want to stay in the village. And I thought the genius of our work back in 2018 was how we were, at least in the concept, somebody they were land poor. They had their house, they didn't have much else, they couldn't afford to heat it, but an auxiliary dwelling unit would let them be in the place they've always been, in an auxiliary dwelling unit, and their house would be an income source for them. That's my very simple
Correct, and
understanding
so
of that.
that was 5 years ago.
And I think everything we should be doing should further that, and it seems like this erodes it. That's all I'm getting at. And there are people may have other views of it, but this idea of owning the place where you live as opposed to renting both places and living someplace else is just so corrosive to building the community that I think we're still.
So Joe, if there was a clause that said only one of which may be, either the ADU or the primary residence, only one of which may be rented, but the other having to be the primary residence of the owner, you'd be comfortable.
I think so, and I want to have people help me understand that, but because that keeps people knowing one another, it keeps the village a village, it keeps,
So let me give you a what if.
okay.
There is this isn't a perfect example, but I think it'll help. There is a house that's currently for sale on Elm Street, which has a carriage house in the back, and it has an accessory dwelling unit above it.
Yep.
It has, at this point, been owner occupied in the main house with a rental in the accessory dwelling unit.
Yep.
It is
No
now,
problem.
it is now for sale. Because the owner is moving out, both units are now gonna sit vacant.
Both, pending, they're trying to sell it.
But they can't rent either unit while they're trying to sell it, because we require
Owner occupancy.
owner occupancy.
Well, if the auxiliary dwelling unit is still occupied, I don't know if it is, I thought that one was empty, but I
It
mean,
is.
that's a unique circumstances. I love the Rigby's, I admire what they've done with the place.
Small community, we know who we're meeting.
I think their home should be the Arts Association, but that's a different question. But I don't know what that means. Their circumstances are not necessarily unique, but they've made a decision they found happily new accommodations
Sure they did.
on Pine Boulevard, and that's great stuff. But I can't see building a law around permitting an absentee landlord situation in that situation.
So let me give you another what if. So what if a developer, so this happened on Susquehanna, builds a house with a garage in the backyard with an accessory dwelling unit above it, with every intention of selling that to a new property owner. But they can't get the special permit to build it because they're not the owner occupant.
Well,
I mean, I can just,
I don't, you know, I don't have a lot of sympathy for those developers. That's not I don't think who we're looking for.
Well,
And it's not to be exclusive, it's just, how do you build a community? We've got what's happening, I'm so concerned, is that we're just getting an aging population of retiree snowbirds here. The housing, they bring all their baby boomer wealth up here, they buy up places, everybody else is priced out, and families can't live here. It's not, so, I'm not for social engineering, but I sure don't like doing things that sort of furthers that outcome because we have a hope that, you know, we're gonna have a benign developer.
Interesting enough, Joe, that's a self-limiting proposition. Because the more that baby boomers buy this place out and leave it empty, the less attractive it's going to be for people to come here. So at some point, it stops.
Well, no, everybody comes up for the summer, they play golf.
But the village does not maintain its character at that point if too many people, as you said, if too many people are not year-round owner occupied. So at a certain point, it becomes no longer a viable village where they come up and do all that stuff. It just becomes a Potemkin village, so to speak. And
so what does that lead you to?
So that leads me to say that this thing will be, at worst, this thing will self-limit itself in terms of how many properties just become totally rental.
Well, but okay, I'm not sure I understand your
this,
reasoning.
yeah, no, Joe and I are not gonna agree, we have different.
So at this point,
I think I understand, that's
Okay.
what I wanted to do. So my second technical question was on the title of this document. We're changing a number of laws, all at the same,
Yeah.
at least under the name of action or project, and we just discussed one of them.
Right.
Can we do one seeker for
We can.
all different laws? So if we go through this seeker, at the end of it, we vote individually on the laws?
It's the impact of the whole if you pass that law.
But I guess
It was not my intention to vote separately on them, they were
So we have
presented by
three
the
separate-
planning board as a package.
of 3 separate laws.
Well, yeah, so
Or
one
three
definition
separate
change
amendments.
and two language changes. That's the way they were reviewed by the planning board and by the county.
and you have the report from the county here. This is,
And you're gonna look at the impact of it in the event that if that law is passed, the impact of all of that together is gonna fashion your vote on the seeker review.
all right. So this again is the law that was presented several months ago, was put forward and for which we held a public hearing at our September meeting. We now have the documents back, and you've all had a chance to read those from the planning board. We are now going to complete the short environmental assessment form because this is a legislative adoption. We are moving to part 2. And, oh, I'm sorry.
Is it?
Yeah, it would have been attached, wouldn't it?
It is here. It's on the other side of part 3, the pages are out of order, that's all.
Oh,
Here's part 2, here's part 3. It just is not presented that way in the packet.
No, you don't?
Okay.
I'll
Oh,
just
it's
look
in
on.
this one.
Oh, I see.
Part 2. So I will begin. And so again, we're thinking about these changes to those 3 laws. Will the proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulations?
No.
No. Will, number 2, will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of use of land?
No.
Well, it will.
Oh, yeah.
I
I was waiting, Joe, I figured you were gonna say something.
Well, so this is where I always get confused when doing seeker for a law change. The adoption of the law will not create a
The
change.
adoption of the law will not, but it will. If you adopt the law, you're changing the use of the property.
Doesn't
But
say,
there's no property there.
but it says intensity of use, not the use.
But I could go either way on it, but I think it will be small.
Yeah,
Well, it's only small because you're going from 1 to 2, but if you're multiplying this across all your jurisdiction, it's good. I mean, I don't see how, I understand that the action, the legislation has to be followed by action, but this is our action is to legislate. And are you saying, Cindy, that in all cases when we're just enacting legislation, there's no environmental impact?
I've read various opinions on it. I would concur that there is a small impact, yes.
Fair enough.
So what do we check?
Is small,
No or small.
no or small. Number 3, will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community?
Small.
Number 4, will the proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristics that cause the establishment of a critical environmental area?
No.
No. Number 5, will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkway?
No.
Number 6, will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy and it fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities?
No.
Number 7, will the proposed action impact existing A, public-private water supplies,
No.
B, public-private wastewater treatment utilities?
No.
Number 8, will the proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources?
Small.
Number 9, will the proposed action result in an adverse change to natural resources, for instance, wetlands, water bodies, groundwater, air quality, flora, and fauna? Number 10, will the proposed action result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems?
No.
Number 11, will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health? So that brings us to part 3. You have a recommendation, Cindy?
I'll make a motion to check the lower of the 2 boxes, which reads, check this box if you have determined based on the information and analysis above and any supporting documentation that the proposed action will not result in any significant adverse environmental impacts.
And have the mayor sign the
Correct.
document. So that's the motion, second by Richard. All in support? Aye.
Sure, this was what we but that's okay.
Right, so that was that. Now, is there a motion for what will now be local 11 of
I'll
2000?
make a motion to adopt local law number 11, which includes changes to 300-17E, 300-17.1B, 300-8, and the definition section of the zoning law 300-84.
I'll
Second.
Second by Richard, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Is opposed?
Oh, opposed, I'm sorry.
And I'll explain my vote because they were bundled. We had discussed the other mixed use and other provisions. I can't vote in support of this package.
Thank you. Randy, you're in the middle of zoning, but we see you arrived. And you are the last item on our additional agenda items, Lakefront Parks Concert Series Review and Future Plans. So you have the floor.
Okay. Take your jacket off. All right, did you get my one pager?
Yeah.
And this is again the last page in your additional agenda packet.
Trying to wrote some things down. Okay, I'll sit in the seat if that's okay. So, yeah, I just kind of wanted to talk about Lakefront concerts since COVID. 4 years since COVID, and I guess when I was asked to start booking the bands for that. So that was in 21. And so at that time, I worked with the Chamber, Terra at the Chamber, so it was kind of the two of us doing it together with the Parks person and anyway. So Terra at the Chamber left, so I've kind of taken over most all of what you see down here now. But also I just want to actually first say that I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity to do this Lakefront Park. It was presented to me 4 years ago. I didn't have to think about it too long. Of course, I said, sure, I love this community, I love music, so I'm glad to do it. And so what it's developed into is really something that's special to me. And I also think at this point now, it's really become quite a, signature event in the village, of the village, by the village, and for the village and the surrounding community. And that's really kind of the growth. I won't spend a lot of time on here. You see some of the numbers. We did ask for, we got a $500 budget increase there 2 years ago. And that really helped. That helped us just quickly under the marketing materials. When you see the dollar sign, that means in that year we're spending money. So when we got the banner in 2022 that hangs on Main Street, of course we're going to have to buy that again. So we reused that. Same thing with the lawn signs. And then last year we had a great idea, and Sydney had some good ideas. I think she had the lawn sign idea, and then doing the mailers. And so the Chamber did that the first year, and so, but I expanded it this past year to do all of 13326. I think all of that kind of really did go a long way toward getting the word out to more people. I like to think, getting a nice eclectic mix of bands, so I get a lot of good feedback on that. So to represent different genres and different musical tastes, I think that helps. And then moving down to food trucks, the first year we didn't have a food truck. In the past, I know Tickle Pink had been there, and so I approached a number of food trucks. The first year we couldn't get anybody. We did get Mellas that we had there for 2 years, and they were great. Last year I tried real hard to get other food trucks, and honestly, half a dozen people said no. This year, I was able to get Dave Neal and another one, and it just, the whole thing this year just went off exceptionally well. So now, much like I have all the bands that you can speak of wanting to play Lakefront concert, all the bands want to play. That's been a couple of years now, so I can book pretty easily. I'm pretty far out. Now I have all food trucks, more food trucks wanting it on the game, kind of, as everyone sees. It's a real fun event, and for food trucks, of course, they can have some business there. That is something we'll need to talk about going forward, because it's, well, I'll get to that, but there is a thing that we could have too many food trucks and then none of the food trucks make money, right? So we have to balance it. So we'll talk about that coming up in a second. And then things like the celebration events, what I mean by that is I try to, I don't know, I get involved with something, I just try to really breathe a lot of life into it and just grow it, just keep growing it, just like to grow it. So I tried to add some neat things in there. So we added basically the last 2 years we've had a season opening. Hanzolo did it last year and it was through the roof. So I was like, we're definitely going to do that. Where we have Stewart's ice cream and we have the children's choir open up for it. That was neat. So And then this Jerry Day is kind of a nod to all the Grateful Dead fans in our area. Okay, so that's kind of reviews what we've done. Like I said, this has become a baby of mine, and I just want to keep, and what I've seen it turn into is just a celebration, community celebration in a festival-like atmosphere. So that's kind of what I've tried to create here. If you go to festivals, there's all kinds of stuff. There's good food, and there's music, and then there's vendors and there's games and stuff for kids, and there's all that kind of thing. So that's sort of segues into the future plans. So I guess, I don't know how much time I have here or want to take. As I wrote all this down and put my thoughts down, I could say a lot about each one of these. I think, before I get into some things here real quick, I think I'm looking forward to next March when we kind of start going. I think maybe we might, just a few of us, get to talk about, people more than me, to talk about these things, about what we might want to do. And maybe it's like a mini committee, I don't know. But because there's a couple things, I'll just go through it. So balancing the food truck thing, right now it's an open permit process. So basically, anybody who submitted a permit could kind of, like, how do I say no, right? I kind of don't, so I don't know. I mean, I'm certainly willing to be like, no, we're full. It just doesn't really, on the permit application right now, it is pretty vague as with respect to the lakefront concerts. I think you have to write in lakefront concerts, you pay $100. Like I said, there's not a process. I guess where I'm going with this is, right now, all 4 of these people want to come back. That, I think I would maybe have like if somebody showed up with a pizza truck, that would be kind of cool, or an ice cream thing. But other than that, I think the supply-demand balance might be there, maybe one more food truck. And I guess, let's just say things were to keep going. It's almost like you might want to do like an RFQ process, almost like, okay, bidders, like everybody submit, and then like.
Do you have a question? If any board members have questions for Randy, would you?
I guess I do.
Okay, kind of settle up.
Let's get bottom line. Are you asking for us for anything from us?
Well, I think maybe like a little mini committee to figure out how we do the food truck thing. I want to add a kids group.
Yeah.
We can do it at the Parks Board, right? Okay, and then there's some other kind of big things that you want to talk about there. So going down to the bottom of this, the only thing I had in my head when I started this season, as I saw all the families coming, was a kids booth. But all these other things kind of spilled out. And one thing was a beer truck vendor applied like August 1st for a permit, and they contacted me.
Yeah,
So
now that would just require some board review on this,
right.
so.
As I've said this every time we've talked about open sales of alcohol, I'm dead set against it.
Right.
I think there's a liability, and if we approve it, somebody gets drunk and goes home, we're liable. I'm dead set against alcohol sales. Can't do anything about people bringing it, but I don't want sales.
Okay, Audrey is chair of Parks.
Yeah, and I would suggest, Randy, that we discuss this further at the next Parks meeting and talk about what some of this could look like, how a committee or subcommittee might be formed of people that can help with it, and maybe to discuss too the permit process that you want to implement for the food trucks and just some of the other issues.
Okay, and then just to finish the thoughts there, because I think a lot of it should be discussed there. I mean, so I'm gonna skip to the July fireworks, 4th fireworks. When I was a kid, man, that thing was awesome, and it was a carnival. And I'm not saying we're gonna have a carnival down there anymore, there's no rides in the games, but again, and I talked to a lot of people that are kind of in our age bracket that remember the July 4th thing, and right now, it was just, it's like this awesome thing, and that's what's in this vision in my head, sort of, that I want to do anew here with the lakefront concerts. And so the July 4th event now, or July 4th fireworks night right now, just has the community concert band play there. We actually, in the budget, I didn't send that, but the budget, and I have a whole spreadsheet, but for the budget, we actually paid for out of the lakefront concert series budget, the concert band.
Can I give you a little historical background
Yeah,
before you go too
Yeah.
far? Historically, there was a concert series budget for Lakefront, and it was, I'll say, $3,000. And then there was a separate budget line for band, and a few years ago, the Parks Board asked that those just be united and the funds kind of be combined. That was one reason it bumped up a bit. So it's not like you're paying for them out of your budget, and they were there first, and I just.
Where I'm going with that is, I would love to actually, what I do on Tuesday nights is, I could do it on fireworks night and incorporate the concert band, maybe have a second band, like a rock band, have the food trucks there, and then the fireworks go off.
Yeah, these are all great ideas, I think, to talk about at Parks
So, I
Board.
just want to get in front of you all,
Perfect.
generously sponsor this event and give me this opportunity, and again, I'm very grateful for what I want to keep giving into. So these are some of the things, I just want to let you know that every band always asks about the rain cover, and I believe that because it's a historical bandstand, there's no real cover. Can they not put a temporary cover up, you know, like it's a pop-up, when they perform or not?
It's not anything.
Is there a possibility of having a rainy location, like the Village Hall?
Again, I think work this through at Parks
Okay,
Board.
so again, these are the things that have come up, and so, okay, I guess
Yeah.
I'll stop there.
So we'll look forward
I'm
to the
very
report
passionate
back
about
from
this.
Anna and Audrey and Parks Board.
Thanks, they're
the-
great.
Sure, okay.
Cindy seemed to have a question.
I just had one comment.
Yeah,
We've spent a lot of time in the past couple months talking about signs, and particularly signs on public property.
oh, yeah.
When you distribute the signs, can you ensure that people know that they have to put them inside of the sidewalk on private property?
Okay,
Because,
that was probably me on that one, so I went out and placed
yeah,
That's a luxury tax.
Okay, inside the
Yeah.
sidewalk, all right,
Thank
yeah,
you.
Jim
Yeah.
Donnelly did that, and I wondered why, all right, now I understand, okay.
thank you.
Yeah, the other thing did with the lawn signs, though, I did put them on Village, like, where the trolley stops, where I did actually go around and put them on Village property and stuff, so, anyway.
We may have to talk about
Yes.
that.
Okay, yeah, so,
But we appreciate
we
it.
can have a little more plan on the Village line signs here.
So thank you, Brandy, and we really, you've done a fabulous
Yeah.
job. I attended a ton of those
And
concerts
it
and,
isn't just me, I do want to make sure.
Yeah.
that others are involved, but yeah, thank you, I think what we've all done is wonderful down there, so.
thank you.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank you so much. Let's see, temporary use permits, Cindy.
There was in your packet another zoning amendment concerning temporary uses. This is to determine if we want to set a public hearing for this at our next meeting, which would be in November. It is addressing requests that we have had from individual property owners to have special events on their properties. Things that might involve a food truck or a poetry reading or a small event that could attract more than your average household worth of people. Our zoning law doesn't currently allow for that. And so this is with lots of stipulations, something we could put in place that would allow for an application process approved by the Board of Trustees, hold temporary uses on properties in the business commercial district and in residential districts if there is a valid special use permit for something like a hotel.
Can I make a motion so we can discuss this?
The only motion you could make
Is
would
to put it on for a public hearing,
Yes.
thank you, I understand that.
But if people
That's
have
the motion.
questions, this
That's
is the time
motion,
to ask.
Yeah.
to set a public hearing for this.
Okay, so you made the motion, who wants to second it? Seconded by George. But there's discussion, did you ask?
Yeah, I'd like to discuss, I mean, before we jump to this, it's a question of whether,
I'm not
Are you
jumping to it,
talking
we can't
about-
discuss it without a motion.
because I don't know how well formed it is before we call a public hearing on something, we haven't figured out what we want it to be about. This is what we did with the sign law, that's, I found very problematic. So are we talking about a profit-making enterprise or just a family party kind of thing?
No, we've excluded family parties. This is, so for instance, I can give you some examples. The Inn at Cooperstown asked if they could have several food trucks on their front lawn and have a special event and invite people to come and taste samplings of the food trucks. Right now, we have to say no. We don't seem to have any provision for that. this would allow that to happen. We had another business, the White House Inn, who wanted to have a reading of the Declaration of Independence for the 4th of July. Seems innocuous enough, but there is nothing in our law that allows for a gathering on private property at a for-profit entity to read the Declaration of Independence. Because he was anticipating like 100 people, that's.
Right, but would the reading be, that would be a fee to go to the reading? Or it just happens to be it's a business that's gonna do this as a thing for the holiday? I mean, I don't understand why that's.
Well, it's on a case-by-case basis, some people would charge, some people wouldn't charge. The food trucks, clearly they would charge for their food.
Of course it would, but
You mentioned the one business that wanted to use their front lawn for like a craft.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
vending.
yeah. So we allow these types of special events on public property, but there have been multiple requests from private property owners. And when there's one, we sort of say, well, there's one, but at this point, there've been like 4. And so we're starting to see a trend that suggests that for-profit businesses want to think outside of the box. And we don't allow for thinking outside of the box very well.
And private property owners as well have been asking for this?
Yeah.
Is there a prohibition right now? We've had parties at our house where we'll have several hundred people.
But they were non-commercial.
Okay, I was just thinking, gee.
Exemptions, number 1, temporary uses that are non-commercial, private events on
Okay,
private
non-commercial,
property.
okay.
Yeah,
Including
Sorry.
weddings, birthday, graduation
But
parties.
here's the nuance, the event may be non-commercial, but it's the commercial enterprise that's doing it to promote what? I mean, if you're a hotel and you're having the food truck business, how do you profit by that?
you charge for the food truck probably,
Yeah, probably.
and you're gathering people.
So you're gonna rent out your property to be a parking lot for food trucks,
Yeah.
okay? Okay, and then it's like the public in,
Or maybe you're the owner of the food truck, so you're benefiting your other business.
Or maybe you just want the visibility.
So
I- yeah, I mean,
there's
it's-
some place in our law right now that prohibits that, is that what you're saying?
It doesn't allow it, and when the zoning law doesn't allow something, then it is prohibited.
Interesting.
And as Cindy said, we've literally, I bet you it's in the past year, we've had like 4 little of these requests bubble up.
Yeah, it had
So-
never happened before.
are there any models for this?
This is based 100%, I did not make this up, I borrowed it from other municipalities.
Say again?
I borrowed all the language that's on here from other municipalities, I tweaked it to Cooperstown and then passed it by our zoning chairs.
Okay. So at this point, the motion has been made to set a public hearing for our next November
25th.
26th meeting. It's been seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Martin, with you it depends. If you do it at your house, it's okay. If you do it at the funeral parlor, it's not.
I've never had an objection there.
All right, I think we have gotten through all our zoning. And we've gotten through the presentation. That brings us to Public Safety Committee. Are there any additions or additional information on the minutes we have in our packet?
Just a small handful of things. First, I don't know if everybody here is aware that Victoria Beagle, who is our parking, or was our parking enforcement officer, has resigned from the police academy. She's not interested in a police career anymore. She does wish to come back during the summer and continue to serve as our PEO, which does a great job there. Chief Cavalieri told me that apparently there's a change in the procedure so that now sheriffs are now permitted to work part-time as a police officer. That's in effect January 1st, and that should help staffing here in a tremendous way, which would be good.
Just so everyone understands, in prior contract, the union contract, for the county, their employees could not, work part-time for any other agency. And that kind of restricted. Now we have a great potential for some part-timers. Richard?
I have one, not concern, but possible. You may need to discuss when they bring them on. The philosophy is a little bit, not significantly different from what we mean by policing and what the sheriff's department means by policing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think Frank is really gifted when it comes to.
I know, but I just want to put that out in the open.
Our second officer in the academy, Keegan Holt, is scheduled to complete his training in February. And the final item in this brief review is that the chief is exploring the environmental issues that will perhaps impact on hanging the Narcan box in the alleyway here on the building here, is accessible. So he's gonna follow up on that and get back to us. And pretty much that's about it in terms of stuff that's not already mentioned in the report you received.
If I may, I'd just like to bring up what I brought up this morning, the item here about the school lockdown active shooter drill. So the state requires these to be held twice a semester. And I just want to go on record as saying it's deeply troubling to me that we're putting children through twice semester lockdown drills. These are not abstract events. We never had an atomic bomb go off that we were dealing with when we were doing our high-level desk things as children. These kids are being inured every time this happens to expect it, to experience it, to associate with it. And I regret that we're not doing more to change the culture of this gun culture that we live in that makes these things so prevalent, and I think distorting of childhood and children's emotional development.
Thank you, Joe. Did you want to say something, Richard?
Yeah, I appreciate what Joe is saying, but that's not relevant to us as a village board. Yes, society's got a problem, but I would rather have these kids trained, and I'm sorry if they're worried. This can happen anywhere, it's been proven to happen anywhere, including many places that said, how did this ever happen to us? So I think it is necessary. Sadly, repetition does create understanding of what to do in an emergency.
Okay. All right, and was there anything on public, the fire and EMS? Anything additional?
The only thing is they had the drill in the woods all weekend, and that went very well. It involved our department as well as Fly Creek and Richfield, and they participated. Mike Simons was saying it looks like we should have the opportunity again to purchase ambulances from Casanova, and he's got the lead on that. The chief has indicated that we have not heard from Moriarty yet regarding the purchase of our old ladder truck. And then everybody should just be aware, and we'll try to get the word out to everybody about the burn ban that's in effect, because things have been so dry.
Burn ban.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Motion to accept Public Safety Committee report.
So moved.
By Joe, second by Hannah, all in favor?
Aye.
Moving on, Doubleday Advisory Committee, Hannah.
A couple of things of note. We talked a lot about the website again and how Kyle sent us a packet but with no pricing. And it was brought up, how would people feel about me looking into a more user-friendly version that like anyone on the committee can then go in and update, like Squarespace, or are there safety concerns with that? I mean, it's not like there's.
I would, I think we really should discuss with Marcia Nye, and she obviously sat there, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't she? And so if she's comfortable, for one, because she's the one who has to sort of connect to that. I will say we did get an alert from the Hall of Fame who found something had been, I don't want to say co-opted, but it was on our Doubleday site, And they were very much on top of it because they look at our baseball Doubleday site all the time. And it was, someone had put another link on there. So I think there are some security concerns, but I guess if it were done carefully and the village and particularly the hall is fine with it, then that would,
Yeah.
does
I think
anyone else have any concerns?
the big concern with Marcia was that it's not user friendly for her either. So for her to go make updates, it's very difficult right now as it is.
Yeah.
So trying to make it easier
Yeah.
for anyone on the committee to be able to add historical, whatever, pictures, whatever we wanna.
To a degree, it does represent the village, so, I mean, obviously, I think content would need to be approved by the village, but I would think that if it makes it more accessible and user-friendly for the staff and everyone, that would be great.
Yeah, I know the couple of members from the Hall of Fame brought up that it hasn't really been updated since 2020, so.
No, and I think that we did ask that of them at one point to provide, and I think, if it's easier for them, if it's a different log-on format, then yeah, that'd be great.
So that, and then induction for next year is also a big discussion with the potential of a Japanese player being inducted.
Ichiro is his name.
Thank you.
Just Ichiro, that's how he went.
This is Cooperstown. The DMCOC is working with some agencies for the language interpretation. I believe, did Cass reach out to you and?
Well, I know that there is actually a professor on campus that teaches Japanese, and so that there are opportunities. And I think we had a student, an international student, working, I think, at the Hall of Fame over the summer, and there may be some other international students who speak Japanese that might be doing some.
Yeah.
So, I think there are opportunities from SUNY Oneonta to participate in some way, shape, or form with this. But nobody has reached out to me about it.
Okay.
In line with that, would it be a reasonable thing for you, I think it would be a reasonable thing for you as a committee to discuss whether or not to ask the hall to pay for temporary signage in Japanese to help people around. And then we have to pass a law to allow it to be put up, but I think, our boards that tell people which direction to go to and all that, I think it'd be really, really nice and highly positive if we did that, and I think the hall would probably be willing to pay for it, so.
So that was a big part of the conversation. I know that there is some state funding potentially that Cass can get through the DMCOC for that, and wants our cooperation, obviously, to figure out where those are most needed. And the biggest concern is how quickly it's going to happen, so being proactive about it. And just making sure we're all on the same page. And then the other big thing we discussed was the field scheduling for Cooperstown High School. The way it's historically been done, Marcia doesn't get that game information until February, often March. And she's kind of working on holding slots for them while other schools are trying to fill that in. So we're trying to figure out the best way to work with the school. I know their scheduling doesn't work as fast as we need it to.
Historically, we've given them a deadline. Do you know, Jenna, if that deadline is still enforced?
I believe we try to enforce it, but it doesn't always.
Essentially, we said if they couldn't give us their spring baseball deadline, and I believe it was either December 1st or December 10th, then they would have to take whatever was left, because that we do have the need to rent the field. In case people are kind of wondering about that, when it became 100 or plus years ago, Doubleday Field was purchased by village residents in a public referendum. And part of that was that that field would be used for CCS events. When I was growing up, it was used for football, if you can imagine that poor field. But it has continued to be used by the high school baseball team. And so that is the background on that, but there's been flux in administration there, and perhaps they just need a reminder. So if Marcia can say, the board has indicated if you have not given me dates by such and such of your spring baseball schedule, then we will just go ahead with our bookings, and you'll have to take what's left, I would say.
Yeah, I know she had a lot of trouble with it last year, so just the board's support of that deadline is
Yeah,
very
so,
important.
yeah, here we go.
I have a question for you, or statement for you, regarding the jersey that got damaged in May. I could not get any traction on getting a signature. Could we go ahead and order it for the kid?
Yeah, I think Vinny did order
I-
it. Do you have to have any information?
I left messages for Vinny several times, and the size is now medium, it's been so long. I would also like, and I'll pay the difference from what the board's willing to pay. I'd like to get him the top of the line thing. I've been in communication with the mother several times, and she's been very patient.
So, I mean, at this point, should we just order it from somewhere else if we can't
No,
get hold of Vinny?
we just pin Vinny down and order it.
I mean, but we've talked about it at every Doubleday meeting, and you and I have both reached out to
Well,
him
you want me to
several
walk?
times.
I can
And
try
I
and walk
sent
in on
him
this.
the email with all the information.
Yeah.
I mean, I've phoned Vinny about 6 times in the last 6 weeks.
So maybe it's just time to choose
Okay, so I'll
another
walk in and
vendor.
order it from him, and then we'll get it.
Okay. Yes, thank
You
you.
want me to do that?
Yes, please,
Okay, I will.
thank you.
No, I just wanna make sure it's my responsibility.
Yes, thank you.
You just wanna buy a couple of hats.
No, I really feel bad about this whole thing. And I tried to make it better and I couldn't, so I really wanna just get it over. And maybe get the kid his jersey by Christmas,
There you go.
or Hanukkah, whichever.
Okay, is there anything else, Hannah, on Doubleday?
Those were the big ones from me, if anyone has questions.
Any question? No?
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Motion to accept the Doubleday Advisory Committee report by Joe, second by George, all in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to Streets Committee.
So just a couple updates since when we met. First of all, the federal government has been funded, which means the Army Corps of Engineers has funded, which means they are planning to start our project the week of November 18th, fingers crossed. So we did put a notice in Village Voices that people may see these Army Corps personnel around working on Willowbrook. There was some discussion regarding the trolley as to next Memorial Day weekend. We are still waiting for official word from the Hall of Fame, but what we may end up doing is running the trolley Memorial Day weekend and then taking a hiatus and then resuming when the Dreams Park resumes. Our PEOs, Brad and Victoria, made us a wonderful, very helpful list of signage that they noticed could be improved. And so you can see their points and then the Streets Committee's points to add. We agreed with most of them. Some of them are a little difficult to achieve. The one thing that they pointed out, which we didn't know, is there is actually no law that prevents parking on Glen Avenue. So I would like to make a motion to set a public hearing for November 25th to add a law that prohibits parking on Glen Avenue, north and south sides, from Chestnut Street west to the end of the village-controlled area.
Second by Ellen, all in favor?
Oh, aye.
And those are my updates.
Thank you so much. Motion to accept Streets Committee report by Hannah, second by Audrey, all in favor? Moving on to, what are we moving on? Buildings.
The elevator is working, otherwise I make a motion to accept this report.
All right. Motion to accept the report, second by Hannah, all in favor?
Aye.
We're now at the, you all had emailed to you the treasurer's report or the finance packet, some of those documents. We now have the finance consent agenda in front of us. It's been requested that we remove from the consent agenda for a separate motion number 14, Dionich Excavating. This is the company firm doing the Elm Street sidewalks. So we'll pull that one. Joe, do you want to do anything else? And I do want to make a special note, or are you going to, the NICOM reports from Deb and Jenna were excellent, and are you highlighting those?
Yes, well, I submitted before our meeting a proposed press release to applaud the work that both Jenna and Deb, our clerk and secretary, have done to improve themselves professionally, and they were recognized for that at the latest NICOM conference. And it takes initiative to get that added recognition, and not all employees show that initiative, and I think we should applaud them. So I drafted up a press release that would come from the board. If you want to tweak it, Ellen, feel free. But I talked to Jenna. If it is approved, Deb has the photographs of the two of them, and I think it would be nice to forward the photographs in the press release, as you may want to amend it to the paper and paper.
If you write up a little order, publish it.
Well, it's written up as a press release.
All right, I think, I haven't had a chance to review it before this meeting, but I will, and I'll reply all, and we'll submit it. That'd be great.
And I'll just highlight one item on the agenda, our property, or rather our sales tax report, as we've got a complete fiscal year report now, and we had budgeted, I think, $386,000. I have that number right?
About that, 375 plus or minus.
And we have $449,000 plus of tax share revenues from the county, so that is.
So 20% more than we budgeted.
That's great.
Otherwise, I move we approve the finance agenda as presented.
Second.
Second by Richard, all in favor? Pertaining to Dionich Excavating, Inc., the latest report is that they will have the entire north side of Elm Street completed by Thursday. They then have to fill it in, and they really, even though it's going to be good weather on Thursday, and they can't really begin any work because we'll have kids running around, and we can't have kids running around in the dark with sidewalks removed. So I'll move the approval of this Dionich Excavating, Inc. for 40% of the project for $137,880, with the approval on Thursday of our DPW superintendent that the work on the north side has been satisfactorily completed.
I'll second.
Second by Cindy, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Grants and project update. Somewhere I did print the press release. I'm not seeing it right here for Welcome Home Cooperstown, but just so you know, we are having a Welcome Home Cooperstown event next Tuesday. We're always the first Tuesday of the month, and this one, as last year in November, will feature Denali, and that we have Holly, and we will have a speaker talking about that, probably some sparklers associated with our event, and there'll be music and food. We realize it is a busy night, it is election night, but the Welcome Home Cooperstown Committee opted to hold the event. Again, it's only 5:30 to 7, so hopefully some of you can attend. It's always a great event to connect with people.
And where is it being held?
It's always here.
It's always here. Okay.
Upstairs, you know, it's bad weather, we're in the hallway. If it's good weather, we're from porch and lawn.
Okay.
I should also point out, and it didn't get mentioned in the press release, but we've been really good about, Pavlina has left, but the Welcome Home Cooperstown, we have all, even our little wine glasses are corn-based, and everything is compostable. We work with Mohegan Farms, so we generate very, very little trash, and then we take and recycle any cans, glass or plastic, so we all feel really good about that. Couple things on New York Forward. No, we do not have a contract yet. And again, when we do get it, DOS has said that it will be one contract for all the village projects. However, at this point, I think we need to get our kind of ducks in a row. So I move that we move 20,000 from Streets Reserve, subject to permissive referendum, and set up a Bank of Cooperstown, New York Forward checking account. So that's the motion. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Part of the reason for that is we finally have completed everything for the Hoffman Lane engineering, and that reimbursement, if it comes with, that was a grant, will be about 29,000, and we'll be able to then have those accounts open for that. Last month, we did have a motion to issue an RFP for the small project fund.
Yeah.
There's good news and bad news.
Yeah.
Well, good news, I think it's all good news, actually, no bad. We don't have to do it.
Oh, good.
Part
I
of the
haven't done it.
reason for that is the housing project in the New York Forward process is going to be handled, and this is all at the direction of the Department of State, by MVID, the Mohawk Valley Economic Development District, and they are totally willing to do, and they've done this for other DRI and New York Forward communities, handle the small project fund of 300,000. So that is, I think, a win-win for us, and
It's on
boy,
my little to-do list now, and I just crossed it off.
cross it off your list. We're finding, between our help with our clean energy communities and climate smart communities, we've just found MVID an incredible resource to us, and really glad to work with them. Let's see, so that's New York Forward. We are at a point, and the landscape architect spoke at the last Parks Board meeting about the Lakefront Park platform. We're still working through a few details with the state, but it appears there might be approval, and the only approval would be to do that preliminary work this fall, no design, construction, so there'd be plenty of time to get feedback on the design. But I am going to ask for a motion to go to bid on that.
Okay.
So, Joe, second by Audrey, all in favor?
Aye.
I have nothing really to report on the I&I study. I don't know if it's come up at water or sewer or anything.
It did come up, we can discuss it.
You'll wait, discuss it under
But
water.
basically, they singled out a few areas for doing the smoke test, which was to blow smoke into the areas of the sewer system and see if it came out in residence, which would show that the French trains sending stormwater into the sewer system, and how big a contribution that was, and they didn't find much
No.
of a contribution. So that's.
That was on, I believe it was on Grove or Maple and Mill. There were two streets.
Yeah, I don't have the map in mind right now, but there were, I think, 3 areas that they had, 2 or 3 areas that they had outlined, and they conducted the test. So.
All right. Round 9, Restore New York. As you recall, in September, there was unanimous approval by this board to apply for round 9 of Restore New York for 217 Main Street. So I did submit that letter of intent to apply, and just the end of last week, we were notified that our intent has been approved. So now we can begin what is basically the CFA application. So I move that we set a public hearing for our November 25th meeting relative to the village's application to Round 9 Restore New York, and I'll get you all the exact wording for the legal notice, and approve the legal notice for property assessment to be published for 3 consecutive days. So that's the motion. Is there a second? Second by Hannah. All in favor? Aye. The reason we're sort of smiling about that, and I may have mentioned it when we were not successful in round 8, then it was a somewhat small pot. It was oversubscribed, shall we say. There were 11 or 12 applications from our area, from our to Mohawk Valley, and they discounted 6 of them, and they were sort of on technicalities. We frequently advertise once our legal notice is, sometimes in a weekly paper, but this has to be 3 consecutive days. So we will make sure we get that all copacetic. And Richard, did you want to say anything about?
Thank you. I don't think it's printed out here in the supplemental packet, because I can't find it.
It was in the, yeah.
George, myself, and Jay Bosley, the supervisor for the town of Otsego, went on a fact-finding trip to visit the casino group, casino group of the people planning and developing the project. And what's the address? 120?
217.
217 Grove, Maine. I'm sorry, Maine. The old Bat Factory. This arose from criticisms and comments I was getting from various citizens that the company was a bad player, that they had problems, that they hadn't taken care of their properties well, and this came about because of issues with their property in Ithaca. We went and visited 3 of their properties, one in Troy, thank you, one in Troy, one in Cohoes, which is across the river from Troy, and one in Saratoga Springs. And I think you have the report here. Bottom line is, this seemed to be a very good company, very considerate, very concerned about security, the cleanliness of the place, and quite frankly, one of the issues that I always had since I worked in this business, so to speak, as a kid, was that the garbage units, trash units were clean everywhere. No spillage, nothing else. The projects that they were working on was done professionally and well thought out. The departments they were working on were basically kept to appropriate standards, and the discussion with them. And they brought up the issue of Ithaca. I did not bring up the issue of Ithaca. As far as I'm concerned, high ratings to this group. There's no problem with the group. The issues in Ithaca based on the location in Ithaca and the pre-existing problems in that community. Everything else they've done seems to be great that we looked at. George?
There were also a lot of amenities that were included with the development, including community rooms. One of the buildings had a daycare
Right.
center and all that. We did encounter several of the residents. Everybody seemed,
Happy?
yeah, more than happy, I think.
And they had very extensive security in all their properties. And that's how they're trying to fight the problems they're having in the property in Ithaca by increased security and cameras and telling residents that they can't let people in, that sort of issue that created problems. So basically, the 3 of us were highly impressed, highly support working with this group, and feel that we have an answer basically to anybody who wishes to comment that they're not good players. By the way, I did invite people who had expressed concerns about them, and none of them chose to come.
All right.
Great, thanks. Should this report be referred to planning and whoever will have responsibility for working with the development, just so that they can have it in their files?
A group, a committee?
No, the committee, will it be planning? I mean, one of our committees is gonna have to deal with the ongoing development.
Well, I think I think it's our decision as the board whether or not to work with these people. I don't know that it has to go back to the
It's not a question, it's just to give them some insight into who they're dealing with. It's
Okay.
information, you went to the trouble of getting,
Okay.
share it with the
Thank you.
jurisdictional committee that.
So the planning board and H part will both have to issue.
Yeah, there are no, it won't go before ZBA because there are no variances requested, but
It's just my thought
Yeah.
to share your
Yeah.
information with those jurisdictional committees.
yeah. No, thank you, and we now have that report in there with this project. The one thing, and it's not on the agenda, I was asked to participate in the Oneana Area Housing Summit last Wednesday. That was sponsored by SUNY Oneana, Hardwick College, the Community Foundation of Otsego County, and Springbrook. And I should point out that one of the big differences on 217 Main is that they always work with a local group, and they, with Springbrook, applied for funding last January, and 1.78 million was awarded to 217 Main project for 8 units on the first floor for supportive housing, and this is going to have also support staff. Just like those places, this building will have, you know, a rec space, a little gym space, etc. So it's well designed. It was a very interesting summit. There were people from New York State, there were people from HCR, the Homes and Community Renewal, and everyone, I really learned some interesting things. Alex Thomas spoke, it's about the third time, and every time he speaks, I learn something new about Otsego County and housing. And I basically served on a panel with the mayor of Oneana and town of Richfield personnel and someone from Springbrook answering basically questions on how to go, you know, move these projects through, and 10 Chestnut was highlighted as well. So it was really, really good, a lot of good connections, and I think a real positive outlook on Cooperstown. And when I was putting this data sort of together for this, I did start off, and Cindy would be so proud of me because she's the zoning wonk and I'm not. But I did point out that when I became mayor, I created the zoning update committee, which now meets twice a month to look at our laws and potentially change anything. But we really know that the tweaks that we did to particularly our short-term rental law, and that's over 4 or 5 years now, little tweaks, have been really successful. And the statistic I cited was between 2019 and 24, we saw a 50% reduction in homes being used for short-term rentals. So essentially 20 houses in our community went from short-term rental times to year-round housing, and that is a significant boost. So all good steps we're taking in our village for these programs. Moving on, we have Parks Board.
Okay.
Did you wanna do Willowbrook or the Upstate Freshwater Institute?
Oh, I'm sorry, was there something on
There was F and G still under the.
Willowbrook?
Nothing on Willowbrook, did you already put the Upstate Freshwater
This we
Institute?
have to approve.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry, but was there anything on Willowbrook?
We'll be starting on November 18th.
You'll be starting, that was pretty much it. Okay. We do need to approve the Upstate Freshwater Institute work plan for in-lake modeling to support a 9E plan. If you recall, we have this $690,000 grant from the Department of State for this. So I move that we approve the UFI work plan for in-lake modeling.
Second.
Second by Cindy, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Now Parks Board.
Okay. So, we just talked a little bit about the end of the season at the various parks, and the two big things that I think came up was the dog park, and there's a resolution in your packet that Jean drafted for us, Dewey, and it's based on some other similar resolutions, but in any case, she also let me know that the Board of Education members of the Facilities and Finance Committee are very pleased to hear that a resolution has been drafted and are excited at the prospect of having a dog park established. So, I guess.
Yes, a question about that?
Yes, please.
I'm looking at the resolution and item number 2 under the resolve clauses, it talks about its design with input from local landscape architects and dog owners, but I'm sure there's some sort of template for this sort of thing. I went online and looked, and there can be pretty elaborate designs. They talk about 1 to 5 acres in size and separate enclosures for different size animals and shade and spray pools and also. So this seems, as a resolution for us to approve, seems to be pretty generic. And what is it supposed to get? What does this do for the advancement of the dog park?
I think it's designed to see if the board is in support of further exploring this and potentially having a dog park.
Right, well, certainly with Friends of the Parks, we talked about a resolution to let them know that we're behind them if they go out and look for funding. I guess I'm asking just generally what we think this is doing in this case, or basically a sense of the board that we would like to see a dog park.
There are just several issues that, let me just say from a legal perspective, I'm not certain who owns. I've been asked to look into that. I'll be honest, I did not complete that. Because I notice here it says that CCS granted a permanent easement. They actually granted 3, but that's where our parking lot is for the drainage. My understanding, the land that everyone was looking at is where we talked about a Little League baseball field.
CYB.
Yeah, and that actually, to my knowledge, is owned by Jane Clark.
No, there was a part that's owned by the school, but you're correct, there were like 3 or 4 easements granted in what was called the CIT and then later the kind of the Linden Ave South End project. The permanent was definitely where we constructed parking lots, but there was one that was a temporary. Yeah, so we would just need to confirm that that area is part of the permanent easement. And for recreational use was, again, specific for a baseball field. Now, I know, previously those plans came up and that they were aware of those plans. And so the area where this was going to be was sort of it was in the.
It's not in the area that was.
Well, it is. It's where there would have been, maybe practice pitching or something, batting.
The only reason I asked that, as you may recall, we spent several hundred some thousand hours putting a membrane down, and used a very specific kind of dirt there that was suitable for a baseball field, but the membrane was done to address
Hydrocarbon based?
Yes, there were a bunch of, there was material found where the old Little League Park was. They found it was a former dump, and there were a lot of hazardous materials. So we excavated that, then capped it with the parking lot, moved a lot of that over to level the playing field, which of course bothered the Little League people, but then spent a considerable amount of money putting a membrane down, which if things are planted there or put through it,
Stakes, but I
it's to
think
avoid water infiltration and water excavation, I guess, or whatever, coming back up through. I think the key's gonna be there, where it is. If it's not on that portion of the property, that doesn't cause us as much problems, and this board will end up deciding if it's property you control. Again, you're gonna be deciding on the propriety of any plan that the parks may advance.
And is this in the town of Otsego or the village?
Town of Otsego,
Yes.
we own.
So that was my one comment, was
Okay.
the insurance.
Uh-huh, okay.
The further point is, we are establishing a dog park in Cooperstown, New York, and we talk about the resident of Cooperstown, that Cooperstown has property available. We actually aren't in Cooperstown.
No, the school's not in the village.
A high school.
But 3 miles not in the village and Ferry Spring isn't in the village.
Right, but we own the property and we manage it, we were proprietors of that. But just as we talked about the park improvement, we have to get to the planning board in Middlefield for
Sure.
their jurisdiction. So I just wanted to
In
be,
this case, I'd say no.
this is our resolution, so I just want to be
Yeah,
clear.
My one comment on it, Audrey, I don't know in number 3 if Parks and Recreation Department is actually something that we have.
Yeah, that's probably needs to be changed.
Yeah.
The wording on that,
Yeah.
okay.
But it is, I do have a little concern there, because if it's right now, our park supervisor theoretically has to handle 6 parks, and
Could
that's
he
a
also
little.
do this?
Yeah, and this would be
Mhm.
one more big thing to add on there. I know it was said that we currently mow it all.
We do mow it.
We have a bigger mower, but if we put up fencing for a dog park,
Can they access
then
it?
we've got, and are we weed whacking around it all? I like the concept, but I think there's enough, couple of questions that maybe we should wait a month.
Okay,
Right, and the other thing, maybe Cindy was getting at it and I misheard. Under number 3, with opportunities for volunteers and community members to assist in park upkeep, we got into that whole issue of liability with Badger Park and how much people can be conducting our, maintenance activities and liability there. So these are all tricky questions.
so how is it
No.
handled at Badger Park?
Well, we ended up not being able to use volunteer labor.
They can go and do things, they can clear ice.
Right.
They can't use village
Can't go,
equipment,
Any power equipment.
any power of equipment, which is a lot to clear if you haven't got a
Yeah,
piece of power
It's
equipment.
hard to clear ice in snow without power.
Do we know how much acreage we want to use for the park or people?
They did have a plan at one point, I
Did they?
know, a year or two ago. I can see if we can pull
that
that
would be
up.
great to see. And so the issue is, the land is, do we know who owns the land? Was it
I
the
have a
school?
map, I am sure. In fact, I pulled
It's
that
school
file
property.
about
It is
2
school
weeks
property.
ago.
Cindy just poured it up.
Might have a permanent or a temporary easement,
Okay.
that there were like 4 easements in that
Right.
South End projects. We're just trying to determine which it is. That was all.
Audrey, I think one thing that might be helpful in the resolution,
Yep,
so we don't continue to have the same discussion
Yes.
over and over again,
yes,
is to include the tax parcel number on which
Yeah.
this is happening. Because
Yes.
and has that been identified?
I do not know which tax parcel it is, to be perfectly honest.
Okay,
Yeah, we'll ascertain, and that will determine the
Okay.
easement.
okay,
Richard?
I believe you and I have the same concerns, that this is going to add increased expenses at a time when we don't have increased money. And it's gonna add more responsibility to various jobs, it's gonna require more equipment, it's gonna require significant person power hours to take care of it.
Overcome that.
And I think there's a little bit of a rabbit hole that we may be going down here.
Why don't we do this? We'll look into some of these issues, so we're gonna look into the insurance issue
Yes.
with the town of Otsego. We're going to look into, the actual property in question. I'll see if I can pull up what they had submitted previously, so
Yeah.
you can see where that is. And also, if there's any estimate of, the costs involved.
Involved.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
maintenance, you know, I noticed they don't say pay for the dog park, but the maintenance, but again, this is where, for instance, in parks, I mean, there are a lot of people who like it, the buffer strip in Lakefront Park was a gift to the village, but we paid $5,000 last year to Boss Landscaping, because our parks superintendent could not possibly take on that with all his other duties, and then $5,000, so we're now $10,000 in, and that could perpetuate, I don't know how long. So we just don't wanna get into another situation where we approve something and then have unassociated costs we aren't envisioning.
And liabilities.
Yeah.
And liabilities.
I feel like we need to do some more research on what other places of a similar size have maybe done or
Yep.
with dog parks and what their costs might be and how they've handled things.
And may I suggest when you
Yes.
ask those questions, ask what the long-term utilization turned out to be, not
Well,
just when it opened.
I mean,
Seriously.
Yeah, no, I have lived in a couple of places, they were much larger places in Colorado and in Kansas where they had great dog parks. I mean, they were big and they were very popular, but that's not where we are. I mean, there's certainly a lot of enthusiasm for it.
I would check with the Village of Hamilton. I talked to somebody at NICOM,
Okay,
and you'll get lots of opinions on
okay,
the dog.
okay, thank you.
Just reach out to the Village of Hamilton.
Okay, well,
Thank you,
I
Jenna.
love
Yeah.
most reading about the reports about Deb and Jenna
Yeah.
about the networking that they.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
That's
it's
really awesome and congratulations.
Thank you.
The other thing that you mentioned was the lakefront park. And actually, the whole Boss contract did come up when I visited with Mickey from the Garden Club. And they seemed a little confused about who was doing what and whether Boss had a multi-year contract, and I learned that it was an annual contract.
It is, we put it in our budget every year, so
Yeah.
it's been in the last two
Right, and
fiscal
I
year
think they
budgets.
just want to better coordinate efforts. So I think that Mitch is going to convene a meeting so that all the players can be at the table to talk about it.
Perfect.
I have one comment on that buffer strip. One of our local residents went down and mowed the entire strip with weed whacker and so forth,
The spousal unit of a garden club member.
2 doors from me.
I'm sorry?
2 doors from me,
Correct.
or 3 doors from me, whatever, but that,
And
but
that-
that, but to the point, he was down there with a blade cutting machine on.
Yep, I did
Yeah.
not know where he was going, yep. I saw him and I thought, where's he going?
So,
Okay,
and
not
then,
good.
so that leaves, does Boss give us back $2,000 for not having to winterize them? I mean, we really have to manage that, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, no, I think the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing, and I think it's really important to
Yeah.
get everybody around the table and make
Going on
it
3
clear.
hours.
Perfect. Audrey,
Yeah,
fabulous.
that's it. Okay,
Thank you,
thanks.
thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so if there's nothing else on Parks Board, we sort of have the questions we have on the resolution, et cetera. Motion to accept Parks Board report by Hannah, second by Richard. All in favor?
Aye.
Community and Environment Committee, you have 2 months' worth of meetings, and you'll note that Catalina did the this month's meeting minutes, so she's going to be an incredible help to that committee. Anything you want to highlight?
Yeah, I'll just highlight, and this will be in Village Voices when you get it. One of the things that we get credit for is a heat pump campaign, which sounds very formal, but it is literally just informing residents in the village that there are benefits to using heat pumps over fossil fuel burning types of things, whether they're hydrothermal or whether they're electric. And if 5 people make a choice to get a heat pump after October 3rd, then we get credit for that and we get to check off a box. This is, Catalina's internship with us is largely about helping us to check boxes that we are already doing what we need to do, we just need to report it to the state.
I think it'd be much more useful if this program would tell me where to find a contractor who will do this. I mean, I tried twice this year to get quotes on putting in a heat pump and got nowhere.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah,
Same,
West Winfield,
actually.
I think, well, that's
Really?
geothermal.
Where?
There's a company out of West
I'll
Winfield that I
ask-
see.
You'll send me the
over there.
information, please.
I'll ask her
Well, I
if
don't-
she can,
I'll
if she can help with that.
Simple. And that came up that, you know, contractors are gonna be the best conduit to kind of keep everybody.
We're also gonna be working in the future on a recycling policy that will be coming before you, that we can adopt as a municipality. Not suggesting that we're gonna pick up everybody's recycling, but when we have events, for instance, that we provide recycling, that we have recycling in all of our buildings, these types of things, so more to come. But it's very exciting to have her and to have made a great contact, as Ellen suggested, at the Mohawk Valley Economic Development District to help us through some of these processes.
Things Kathleen.
Evelina, yeah, that one.
Do you think she would also be able to look into like funding opportunities or grants, discounts for the heat pump situation and share that along with the contractors?
Yes, I know that she has started to identify, most of New York State's programs are income-based. Some of them come as tax credits, beneficial to a business owner. So yes, we could have her put together some information about what is available.
Thank you. I think it would encourage people.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
do we know how many people have heat pumps in the village?
We don't, no, we don't.
You can often tell by looking at the outside of their house. You see
Yeah, that's
units.
true, that's
Yeah.
true.
They're usually quite apparent.
Yeah.
Anything else? Nope.
No, unless there are questions.
Motion to accept the Community and Environment Committee report from George, second by Audrey, all in favor?
Aye.
Under Water and Sewer Board is the contract.
Right, well, there's one issue before that having to do with the grease trap letters and the lack of compliance. And at our last Water and Sewer Board meeting, right here, Martin, we talked about, looked at the law, we have authority to establish a penalty, which we haven't done yet for failure to comply. So at our board, at the Water and Sewer Board, we discussed a new letter going out to the non-compliant addressees, saying, this is what we're doing, this is the fine that will be imposed if you don't comply. And the question was, how much, what does it cost to do a grease trap inspection? What's the incentive? You know, we don't want the fine to be too low, because they'll pay that instead of doing an expensive grease trap, but we don't want to make it too punitive. So maybe we just do what the standard, I think the standard fine is what, 250?
Yeah, I don't think it's.
Yeah, I
enough.
don't think it's enough. I think it should be $400.
Oh, I think it should be 2,500, that'll catch their attention.
Well,
No, you wanna catch people's attention and get them to do this.
Okay.
but we're trying to create a culture of compliance instead of
That's
just
right,
be
that's
arrogant
right.
about it.
But we've gotta be heritage about it, because they won't respond, I know what the word
Well,
is.
we do, well, anyway.
And if they don't, you could always pass a new resolution increasing the fine. It's expensive, I have
To do
to,
a grease, not, a lot of these places, I'm assuming, that they're not operative or they're not.
I ended up paying, back when the village disconnected all of the structures on the north side of Main Street, everything from the Tunnicliff Inn, the Danny's, and all the way down through, all their roof drains ran into our storm sewers. And the village rightly said you gotta disconnect them, which they did. The dilemma for me was I was the low point between Willow Creek and all of those drop inlets. And it literally took out the little two-story house we have back there. And it also moved the last remaining, actually original ice house off its foundation. And so I went to the village, this is long before any of us were here, and said, you know, you've got to help me. And they said, well, no, they're never allowed to put that in. So I put in my own, I took the village specs. I put in 3 drop inlets down the alleyway. I invited all of these people to hook into my line. I got Army Corps of Engineers Authority, ran a pipe, and then removed all the buildings at a cost of over $100,000. But it's done, and 2 years ago, we suddenly backed up to beat the band. We had water flowing all over the area, again and down the alley, and into some of the buildings. And it turns out somebody was dumping grease. And we actually had to dig through about 5.5 feet in a 18-inch sewer line that it virtually coagulated and just backed up and came out of the drains. So it's expensive because just to do that cleaning was over $1,000.
That's all, whatever's right.
All right, is there a motion, Joe? Because you're right, I mean, we do have it within our law, we set the fine, and so I think with the letter, you know, you could say, if you do not provide proof of a grease trap clean out, inspection and clean out by, give them a date, then we will assess a fine of, and what would you like, make a motion for the fine?
I want to inform to help here, I thought of $250.
That's not enough.
If it's not.
I would say $400.
$400
I would say higher.
I know you can get them for like $275. You had a dilemma there, but I think many restaurants can have that done for between.
And we want certificate, we want some, first of all, we want proof that they have a grease trap, and then we want proof of it.
And that's what you put in the letter, but right now, we just need to set the fine amount.
Okay, so I'll go ahead, Cindy.
Well, I was just gonna say, setting a one-time fine is not gonna be enough, right? Because I don't do it now, I get fined whatever the figure is, and then what comes next? So
Well,
it
these are
needs to-
annual.
This will be quarterly.
I think it needs to be quarterly.
The bills are billed quarterly, so you're giving them until whatever, pick the date. We just sent, unfortunately, the water bills are going out now, so there's been one reading. So I would say have it done by December 1st. If you haven't heard by December 1st, then on the next quarterly billing, and that reading's done in January, then it'll be on. And the beauty of these fines on that soil, or on the, you know, wastewater, sewer and water bill, it's basically on the sewer end. They don't pay it, it's gonna go on their taxes. We are gonna collect this, so we do have a method.
Yeah.
Right, and but it's an annual inspection. It's not every quarterly bill which we're requiring an inspection, are we?
But at this point, I can't remember what your original letter has. I didn't put it right.
Wrote it.
It was your letter and I rewrote it.
I thought your letter called for more than annually.
I thought it was semi-annually. So at this point, they've missed the fall inspection.
Yeah, it was October 1st, the local letters.
Yeah, October 1st. So they have violated the
They
October
don't care
1st.
because we don't have teeth in our rules and our
We're
fines.
talking about it right now. That's
Well,
what
you're belittling my comment about in the $1,000 plus range. That'll get people's attention. If it's $275 to put it in and maybe $100 to service it, all of a sudden, not doing it will look pretty, will look pretty bad to them. If it looks like it's a wash, if we catch it, they're not gonna do it.
Let's move incrementally. I mean, this is a
No.
long-term
Move
problem.
incrementally, start.
Right, well, it'd be 400, if they don't do it, that would be on their next bill, because we can't append it to this one, so it'd be the reading in January, and then, every month time, so essentially we would be getting 1,600 a year if they don't do it.
Oh, right, but they're only required to do it annually. So if they prove an annual, this is my question, I thought we were
Oh,
required.
it was
to prove
annually, I
it.
thought.
Yeah, the letter was only annually, and it was by
Okay.
October 1st.
Oh,
Right, and so they didn't comply, but I'll tell you what, Jenna, if you can send me in Word form the original letter that went out, I'll tweak it to add in the 400.
And
You
I'm
name it, the board can decide what they want to assess. $400 sounds fine to me, and then I'll run it by Martin and we'll get it out.
I'm happy to do that with you, Cal.
But it'd be $400 for the year,
No,
or
no,
it'll be quarterly?
Well, my feeling is if they're charged, they have an annual duty, and if they don't meet that annual duty, they get fined $400.
And then if they don't meet it the next quarter, they get fined another $400.
Well, that's my question, I don't know where we're going with it.
Once they've been
You're not gonna
$1,600.
get me to agree to any of this below a significant number that will get people's attention, because people ignore these things. I've had people tell me, well, I had a former member of this esteemed, august body, when I said, you can't park here, responded, but nobody ever tickets me. I don't care if I occasionally get a ticket. What's the big deal? Because it's cheaper than paying for parking. I want this to not be cheaper than paying for parking. I want people to say, oh my God, if they catch me, it's a lot of money. Not say, well, let's see if they catch me because it's a wash, if I actually get a fine versus doing it.
Can we try,
$1,000,
can we try the $400,
No.
see what the impact is?
Not enough.
And then look to readjust it?
more. 500? I'll compromise on 500
Oh.
to see if it works.
I was willing to go with 1,600 if they did, by doing it quarterly. I just pulled up the letter, I will send it to you, it had the picture of the grease, in all.
500 a quarter.
Is it in Word form, do you have it in Word form? So
Yes, it is, so I will send it to you, but, accordingly, you're hereby notified that by October 1st, 2024, and annually thereafter, you are required to file with the village clerk a record, including service invoices and staff records, demonstrating that you have a grease trap servicing your kitchen that is in good working order and has been cleaned and serviced. We did put not less than quarterly, so that is in there. So that was where I think I was coming up with quarterly, but because we're only going to be, they obviously violated this, but now we have to give, we didn't append it.
So each quarter that they're not responding, they're supposed to be providing us with proof of an inspection and that it's working.
Annually, it does say annually again,
What
according
did you just read about quarterly? I'm
So what is
sorry.
it here, they should send us something that every quarter they got a service, but I can't keep track of every quarter who didn't send letters.
Yeah,
So
that might not have been the best,
It
so,
needs to be annually, and it shows that they did all those quarters, is what I
Yeah.
take that letter as.
That sounds right.
Mhm.
I don't know how I would be able to
Yeah.
track it.
And we have a clerk problem if we're gonna be marshaling scores.
Yeah, and also-
but you're
But all
not
you have
filing
to-
them quarterly according to this. Annually, thereafter, you file with the village clerk a record. So you're doing it like once, showing it was
You did it all
serviced.
year.
Yeah. But I will send you the record, but I think, it has to be a fine that, obviously this has been ignored. I will point out that one other establishment did respond and it didn't get on the list.
Yeah, we
Joey.
have 3 so far total.
3 did respond. So I will forward this, let's just set today the amount.
I'll move we set a $500 fine.
I'll second that one.
Second, by Richard.
All right.
Any discussion?
I wanna know how often we're
Yeah.
assessing this
Quarterly.
$500.
No,
It's-
no, it's the letter, the
annual.
response is owed annually, and if you don't give the annual response that you did it quarterly, you're getting fined $500.
Yeah,
So
Well,
then,
So for the whole year.
I withdraw my
Yeah.
second.
my question is, we send that out right now to everyone who didn't do it. They pay the $500, but they still don't give
No,
us that
we are-
proof.
no,
Are
we-
we charging them $500 again?
That's my question too.
We cannot charge them for a fine that wasn't in place.
but they did that.
Yeah.
So
Well,
this is
okay,
prospective,
in theory,
right, so we're,
next year.
January 1st.
right, well, effective January 1st, this is what you're obligated to do.
Yeah.
By the end of the calendar year, send us a record of your having quarterly cleaned your grease trap. And if we don't get that by the end of the year, the end of the calendar year 2025, you're gonna be charged $500.
And I think
That's the
we need also to put in there though, which will be added to your sewer bill, and if upon non-payment will become part of your tax levy,
Right.
they'll realize, and you'll be subject to potential consequences if you fail to pay it on your tax.
Well, just like we do with taxes, if you don't pay them on time, is a penalty. Again, the penalty for not filing this on time is another $500 for each quarter subsequent.
I agree with you, so you
You-
get
you-
assessed $500,
balance
and
for-
the next quarter, we
whatever,
still
isn't it?
haven't submitted your annual
It's another
assessment.
$500.
You
I know,
get-
but I just don't know who's gonna keep track of this quarterly.
They
I
are,
just
I will.
don't find it.
I'll take a percentage of it, I'll do it.
the initial letter did not require a quarterly report.
No,
I'm
it
not,
did.
I'm not saying a quarterly report. I understand it's an annual report, but if you fail to file your annual report, then you should be incrementally charged, right? So you fail to file it for 3 months, you get a charge. It goes to 6 months, you get another charge. It goes to 9 months.
But it's due one time.
One time, right.
Yeah,
You don't
it's
want
only
to-
do
that
one
doesn't-
time though.
I know, but
I think what
You can
Cindy
explain
and
it
I
better.
are saying is like, maybe they'll pay the fine, but still not show proof
that's what
that
I'm
they
afraid
did it.
they're gonna do.
Well, that's why the
Well-
fine has to be high enough to make it worth their
Oh my
while to
goodness.
do it.
Well, but
Or
I
in the
hear your
letter, can
point,
you-
but the fine is based on their failing to provide the record.
I'm gonna suggest that we need this like written out as a policy in writing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're gonna,
Yeah,
To do what?
To write it out,
We need to
exactly.
write it out.
yeah, we can't do this as a committee of the whole, right?
But we can set a fee, and the policy letter can go out, but I think there has to be a fee at this point, and that's what, otherwise we're waiting to November 25th, then,
But we're
you know,
meeting next week, we're meeting next Monday, right?
I cannot tell you, that because,
Okay.
the
Alright.
union will vote next Wednesday.
Okay.
Or, I'm sorry, this Wednesday, and if they say we don't wanna go with union insurance, that meeting will be not necessary.
Oh, okay.
So I don't wanna wait till the end of November, we have the potential to just set a fine, so the motion has been made and seconded.
Which is
Right.
For $500?
For now, we can always change it. We can work this thing out, write out a more permanent piece of legislature and take care of that next time.
And
Right
when
now, $500 this minute, the fine regarding that letter
And when is that $500 due?
immediately.
The letter will, I think you have to, because we didn't in this initial letter, and that may have been a failure on our part.
We talked about it, but we did not.
We did
set
not
the fine.
approve it at the time. I think this one has a date of like January 1st. You know, if you have not shown us your grease trap inspection and clean out records by January 1st, then a $500 fine will be levied against your sewer bill, which if goes unpaid will be levied to your tax. Yeah, so that's basically what that letter
I'm
is.
happy to work.
So is 500 good?
Yes.
All right, so motion's been made, seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, and the one other thing was the Speedy's permit contract work by Delaware Engineering. I move that we approve the Speedy's contract work. The reasoning for this is that both our flow, which is being addressed in our I&I, and hopefully reducing water infiltration into the sewer system, and the phosphorus levels have exceeded our current permit, so we are looking to deal with that.
I'll second it for the purpose of discussion. So we discussed this a little this morning, Mark, and we'll bring it up. You're on page 3 of 7 of the contract. This contract is kind of being executed after substantial work has already been done. So the question is, what is our authority to pay for work that we don't have a contract for in the beginning? Now,
Was it an emergency?
This wasn't an emergent situation.
So how were they contacted, how were they
Well,
to be paid?
what happened was there was a violation of the permit. There was investigation recognized needed to be done. Delaware was brought in to do it. They worked in July, August, and September and accomplished some tasks for which they are, through September 30th, are seeking $19,547.50. So that's part of the contract, and there's a future, on page 5 of 7, there are future costs of $10,452.50. Now, the contract, as it's written, has a not-to-exceed number of $30,000, but it seems to be contradicted, that statement on page 5 of 7. But on page 3 of 7, under this contract, it says, we're providing this contract to cover work activities completed to date. So we're paying them in arrears, and to identify likely work needed going forward. Cost is 2 paragraphs later. Costs for work to date will be provided along with a not-to-exceed budget. But then they have this strange proviso, and it says, understanding that compensation will be a time and expense basis, irrespective of the cost limit or not. I don't understand how that works. But in any event, what struck me about this contract, and I just want to make sure we're doing things appropriately, is that we will agree to pay for stuff that was done before we approved it. So we're approving it in arrears.
Okay, and so I guess I'm still coming back to, if it wasn't an emergency, who hired them? Who told them to undertake this is my question. I mean, somebody had to contact them to say, we have a problem, can you help us?
Delaware was advised on page 2 of 7 by the village in July 2024 of the new permit and schedule of compliance. So the new permit conditions put us out of compliance. The village requested and Delaware agreed to assist the village with preparation of the interim progress report related to the wastewater treatment plant performance and submittal. So we asked them, I guess on a handshake, or we asked them informally to do it with the expectation that they would be.
And the board never acted. It was somebody said to them.
Well, I mean, I would argue that it was a bit of an emergency.
I would too,
Being out
because
of compliance with our Speedy's permit is a
Is this
is a
on
big
our
deal.
new sewer plant?
Yes.
How can we, my understanding is.
there is, I think, there's a bit of a saga on that, but our flow, and that's one of the reasons we're undertaking that I&I.
Okay,
Because we have X number of hundreds of gallons going through that we know we're not introducing into the system.
Yeah.
So we're hitting flow, and once you hit a certain level of flow, it affects your phosphorus. And those two parameters, it's mostly the phosphorus parameter that we're
Right, but.
All right, so I've asked Mitch, and he said, we've been working them, and it was sort of basically an emergency situation. Mitch and Jarrett reached out to try and resolve the Speedy's permit violation.
Okay. What I don't understand is if there's more water going in, I guess I'm not an engineer, but I remember them telling us how much capacity we had,
So
how.
here's the
Yeah.
issue. There
And
is-
we think there may have been an issue with the flow meter
The
in the
original,
prior.
it's scoping the project. I mean, this is awkward stuff, but we need to understand it. What we discussed today was when Delaware was scoping the project originally and the other contractors, they relied on the existing flow meter at the plant that may not have been calibrated properly. So with that foundational miscue, the plant was designed and operated. Now we're suspecting, say, no, let's do an inflow and infiltration review to see if we're getting extraneous water into our system, and that all the numbers were right, but we've got this, we've got cracks in our sewer pipes that water's infiltrating to. The first portion of that investigation was the smoke testing to see if storm drains or house.
Okay, we have to go to executive session tonight relative to a personnel. So there's motion has been made and seconded to approve this. I think the way going forward is to have Delaware and come back to water and sewer and show the data that they showed to Mitch and Jarrett, et cetera, that led us down this path, because obviously there's a degree of not being informed there.
What boggles my mind, if I may, there was talk, I was present at a meeting where we talked about, would this have the capacity to handle Dreams Park?
And we agree,
Because Dreams Park had approached us.
and we still do use Dreams Park, but this is far in excess of Dreams.
Dreams Park.
All we're taking is gray water from Dreams Park. This is, all right, we're getting off. I think this is
No,
really sewer.
I think it's an awkward discussion, but it has to be had. We probably could
Absolutely.
review it. We could review it with the Water and Sewer Board and have Delaware come and make a presentation. We really need to find out what we're asking them, and they have to be prepared to answer. And I would like
Absolutely.
to be at that next meeting if we're gonna get them there.
Okay,
I'll come.
Okay.
all right, so there we go. We will have, make sure to mention to Mitch to schedule them to come at the next sewer water board. So the motion has been made and seconded.
Excuse me, that next meeting, I think, is the 12th, is that the 12th of November?
It's the second Tuesday.
Second Tuesday.
Yes, the 12th.
12th is the second.
I'm not gonna be there, for what that's worth. I will be traveling back from out of town. So I don't know, maybe we need a special session on it, but, or they could carry on without me, but that's.
They can present, and hopefully, as you say, they're engineers on that water sewer board, and hopefully they can fill in anything that needs to be done.
Sure.
All right.
So our motion is for a contract not to exceed 30,000, correct?
Correct. And seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. And Watershed Supervisory Committee minutes, you had a question, and you've waited all night. What is it?
I wanted clarification on the point in the minutes of the last meeting.
Is this August 2nd or October 2nd or 16th?
I believe
The second one?
Yes.
Joe.
And
Okay. And you don't need to answer this now, you can just get back to me later so I can put it back to the league. But just this question about requests to towns for funding.
Patty, I asked the same question earlier today.
funding requests to towns?
Yes.
Okay, no, if you have a question, I imagine all the board does.
I didn't understand it.
Okay, so in light of the costs associated with the development of a 9E plan, and of course, we have this like $680,000 grant, but some of that is obviously local share. The Watershed Supervisory Committee, which again is with representatives from Middlefield, Springfield, and Otsego, felt that they should go to their respective boards and ask for $15,000. And at this point, Middlefield and
I'm sorry, each?
Township,
Okay.
they did, because of the costs associated. We approved a contract tonight for just in-lake modeling that was over $200,000. So they were just asking for more buy-in from the townships and we have the tributaries, et cetera, and the taxable property along the waterfront to help support that. So that's what that was. So that was a good question.
Can we respectfully request that they amend their minutes to make that clear, because now there's been multiple people, myself included, who have asked the same.
Jenna, can you,
I mean, Marcia does this, if somebody wants to just reach out to her so she can tell her team to amend it.
right, just mention to Marcia that the October 16th, which probably they haven't approved yet, if the village board would like that change. And the other activity under the Watershed Supervisory Committee, I move that we transfer the $175,000 that we were budgeting for this grant to Watershed, from Watershed to the capital account, the HWS account. So there's a motion, second by Cindy, all in favor? Aye. And then proclamation, which is in your package, you have a mock-up. I move that we approve and sign this proclamation. Proclamation for America's 250 Commission and all the 250th anniversary events. So motion's made, seconded by Joe, all in favor?
Aye.
I remember this, maybe I last one.
And old business, it says village seal, but as I discussed with Jenna today, we have a brass kind of seal that's on all the official incorporation documents, etc. We're not really looking to change our seal, which has hops and a plow and denotes our heritage. We're looking to, that was to revise the logo, basically. It would be on our stationery. We had 9 entries. We have basically the library leader, the Art Association, Janet, someone from the Hall of Fame, and the Fenimore Museum. That committee of 4 has been given all 9 entries, along with the parameters that we had sort of discussed when considering a logo, and they are going to be making a recommendation to the board, which I have told them the board will have the final say.
If we do, I didn't know we actually had a seal. I was working under the impression that we didn't have a seal, but we have a seal. That's a seal? Why don't we use it?
No, this is our logo.
Yes, okay.
It's the logo we're looking at, and that's why I was saying the seal and the logo were kind of used interchangeably with what it is. And then, so now breakfast with the board, Monday, November 25th at 8, and our next regular trustee meeting, November 25th. We do need to, before I adjourn, we do need to have just a very brief executive session.
I move we go to executive session.
I second it.
Yeah, you don't have to be here. We're getting rid of our Cindy, all in favor? Aye. All right, and as soon as that door's open, I'm
Works long hours.
She does, she gets comp time for this, so that's nice. You get it during the daytime, but she's not there with her